meeting of the Monte Sereno City Council for December 3rd will come to order. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Elahi.
Present.
Councilmember LaBouvet.
Present.
Councilmember Leuthold.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Lawler.
Present.
Mayor Turner.
Present. Are there any changes to the order of the day? No? Okay, our first order of business is a presentation from the Monte Sereno Los Gatos Police Department from Chief DeSena and Captain D'Antonio.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Pete DeSena, the Chief of Police of the Monte Sereno Los Gatos Police Department, and I'm here to present our biannual police services report. This is actually a time frame from January to June of 2019. Typically, we like to do this in August, but the scheduling was a little difficult, so we are doing it now. So we're going to start off with our Part 1 crimes. Our total for now, Part 1 crimes are the uniform crime reporting stats collected by the Federal Bureau of Investigation to as kind of a volunteer statistical gathering nationwide. So as you can see, there were only actually a total during the 6-month period of 8 Part 1 crimes. There are no violent crimes, which emphasizes the reason that we all want to live in Monte Sereno. It is actually the average over the last, I think 2012 to about 2018, the average is about 33 Part 1 crimes per year. So at 8 for a 6-month period, we're on track for 16 for the year of 2019. So I will be claiming personal credit for a 50% reduction in crime here in the city. Next slide. We have notable cases. We actually have one which initially started out when the alleged victim called in to report that a bunch of electronic and computer equipment was stolen by his ex-girlfriend as a result of a breakup. Actually, it turned out, as the officers investigated, that she was there collecting this stuff because he apparently had hidden a bunch of covert video cameras in various places throughout the house and was recording her without her consent or knowledge. This case is still actually under investigation. Our detectives are working with the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office, the County Crime Lab, and REACT, which is a high-tech crime task force for the county to assess all the video stuff. So still in progress, and we'll see where that goes. But not as a result, but we also decided, typically we have one of our detectives assigned to a countywide task force. Historically, with Los Gatos Monte Sereno, it's been the special enforcement team, which kind of focuses on narcotics and violent crimes, but we decided to switch that up over this last year, and we now have someone assigned to REACT. Unfortunately, it's only part-time right now because of staffing issues, but we're hoping to get him in there full-time so we can take advantage of, I think a lot of the crime we do see here tends to be high-tech related, identity theft and that kind of stuff. So to have someone trained and part of a task force that really focuses on that kind of crime is going to be, I think, a great benefit to us. So next slide, we do have a couple of additions. Most of you have met Kaz, our canine, and I think the last Monte Sereno City Picnic, you met Remy, which is our new trailing bloodhound, and that's the handler, Kevin Bond, who's one of our motor officers. Remy is collateral duty. She's actually trained to track, or actually trail is the technical term, missing persons as well as evidence, et cetera, et cetera. So she's going to be a good asset should we run into one of those situations. We also purchased this year one of the Zero up in the upper right is a Zero all-electric motorcycle. Now I don't think we're going to be actually transitioning to Zeros. It actually works very well. It's totally silent and much like a Tesla, it has a great deal of acceleration. But you know, our motor officers are really kind of set on the gas powered. They, you know, cops, they say that 2 things cops don't like is the way things are and change. So we'll see. Well, eventually we might get there. They're a great resource and they work really well, especially for parades and special events. So next slide. Our patrol activity remains pretty consistent. For this 6-month period, there were about 319 calls for service and 185 proactive events. So proactive events is when officers are self-initiating either car stops or pedestrian stops, excuse me, or premise checks in order to quell crime. So again, that's pretty consistent with all of our other years. The next slide is our response times, also pretty consistent. So priority 1 calls are those calls where there might be a life in danger, immediate response. Our target time is 5 minutes. We're averaging about 4 minutes and 7 seconds, so we're ahead of the curve. Priority 2, again, 10 minutes, and our goal is 7 minutes. And those are crimes where it's not necessarily life-threatening, but maybe a serious threat to property damage or theft. And
Chief, if I could add, are these Monte Sereno?
These are
items
all
or
Monte Sereno.
Just Monte Sereno.
Yeah, these are all filtered out
Thank you.
Monte Sereno stats. Priority 1 calls were basically the 9 that we had. 1 was a prowler call, which was unfounded. 2 were unknown injury collisions, one of which was actually CHP jurisdiction, and the other was unfounded. It was actually a driver sleeping in a car and had like old damage, but someone called it in as a possible accident. 1 was an in-progress residential burglary, which actually also was unfounded, and it turned out to be the neighborhood kids. And then there were, and the unfounded ones actually are great, because I think that's the real value of being in communities like this where people actually care, so people will call it in. So call in all the unfounded ones that you want. We welcome them, and I think we can, like I said, by and large, we find out, we get to the root of the problem, but I think it shows that the community members actually care. There were actually 4 fires, and then finally there's a welfare check, which unfortunately turned out to be a suicide. Next slide. We are contractually obligated to provide approximately 80 hours a week of patrol time, patrol hours. That works out to basically about 2,080 hours for a 6-month period. As you can see, we're at 2,269. Please don't tell Los Gatos. Traffic enforcement we're actually required about 208 hours for the 6-month period. We're also a little bit obviously above that. And then there were about 31 hours worth of investigation by our detectives. There were 4 vehicle collisions reported in the city of Monte Sereno, and fortunately, none of them involved injuries, and surprisingly, none of them involved alcohol. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Captain D'Antonio to talk about our community outreach efforts as well as our emergency preparedness.
All right, thank you, Chief. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Mike D'Antonio, and I'm the Support Services Captain for the Police Department. So Chief actually gave me the fun part. Community outreach is really our chance to integrate ourselves with the community and really help us to feel part of it. It helps us to what we call, and may have heard me use this term before, but really that deep knowledge of the community that we serve. And the officers are able to collaborate with the community, get to know their community, and really there's a reason for it, and it is a lot of feel good, and it's important, but like the Chief alluded to a little bit, it's about building those relationships to help to keep the community safe. So we have found that when you're comfortable, when you've built a relationship, that you feel like it's okay to call the police, that you're more likely to do that. So if you do see something suspicious in your neighborhood and you have a relationship with your police department, that's going to encourage folks to do that. In addition, what it's going to do, it's going to help to keep us all safe, because having those extra set of eyes and ears are really valuable for us, because we can't be everywhere all the time. So if we have people that are aware of their surroundings, if they see something that looks out of place, and you guys know your community better than anyone, so you'll know if there's something that maybe just that doesn't feel right or doesn't look right, that you can call us, and we're going to be happy to respond. So some of the areas, I mean, we do a lot of community outreach, but there's 3 areas that I want to touch on, and the first one is our Neighborhood Watch program. Right now, we have 8 neighborhoods that have gathered and come together to develop Neighborhood Watch programs, and we're encouraging more. And so what that means is if a neighborhood is interested in hosting a neighborhood watch and bringing their community together, that we'll either come out to a residence in that neighborhood, or if there isn't room, you can come to the police department. Officers will be there to tell you about crime tips, to tell you about some of the trends that are happening. We like to give a little bit of a informational teaching about what it's like to call 911 and what to expect, because oftentimes people haven't done that before. And so again, that's that comfort level and a little bit of preparedness about what the dispatchers are going to be asking in those situations. The mayor has actually encouraged that to have additional neighborhood watch programs in the city of Monte Sereno, and Jackie Rose is actually working with some folks right now to put those together. The other thing that I'd like to touch on is our On Watch program. So right now in the city of Monte Sereno, there's 26 residents who have registered their cameras with the police department, and it's a valuable resource for us, because in the event of a crime has occurred, what our officers do is they'll immediately ask dispatch, are there any cameras in the area that may have picked up the suspects or other evidence to that crime? And then we're able to quickly go to those residents, ask if we can take a look at that security video and see if that will assist us in solving the crime. So again, we encourage more residents to sign up for On Watch. Cameras are a valuable resource for us when we're looking at solving crime. The last one I wanted to highlight for tonight is our Victim Services Unit. So our Victim Services Unit has been around for several years, going all the way back to 2011, and we were actually recognized by the International Association of Chiefs of Police for the program. The program is a volunteer-based program that is really meant to help residents when they do become victims of a crime or other police-related activity. So the crime part probably makes sense to you, and when I talk about other police-related activity, it may be something like a serious car accident. It could be somebody who is in a mental health crisis, and families need help. And so our volunteers are actually trained and have a background in specific areas, and then we'll call those folks out depending on what that call for service is. And the reason why I bring that up tonight is we're looking at revitalizing that program. We'd actually like to make it stronger. We have 2 folks right now that are willing to do field calls for us. So in other words, they'll come out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and if an officer needs them at a critical scene, they will respond. So we're looking again to revamp that program, make it stronger. So if anyone's interested, you can go on our website, and you do have to go through a process. There's an application that needs to be filled out, but we really encourage anyone who has time, that wants to volunteer, that has some expertise in areas that may be related to crime prevention, mental health, or other services. We'd love to have you participate. And next slide. The next thing I'd like to talk about is our emergency preparedness, and it's another area that helps keep us safe. And so we're just really proud of the efforts that we have made moving forward. During this reporting period, we've had actually a couple events of significance, and one was when we partnered with the Santa Clara County Fire Department to put on a fire extinguisher training. And it doesn't sound like a big deal, but if you've never really used a fire extinguisher and had an opportunity to do it in a safe manner, it was a hands-on experience where people could actually take the fire extinguisher, put out a fire, and see what it's like to do that in a safe manner and not get themselves in a position where they get hurt. The second thing that we've done, and it's new, and we did it in this reporting period, is looking at developing and increasing our resources in emergency preparedness by bringing together our neighborhood watch groups and our CERT program. So our CERT program is our Community Emergency Response Team, and those 2 entities, we believe, can come together and actually help us in the time of emergency. So our CERT teams actually, in the event of emergency, will activate, And then they have what we call neighborhood incident command posts. And those posts will open, people can come to them for resources, it helps with our communication. And now what we'd like to do is leverage the resources by including our neighborhood watch folks. And so for the first time, we actually did that in November. We conducted a drill. We were fortunate enough to have almost 90 participants actually give up their Saturday to come down and participate in what we developed as a wildfire evacuation drill. We also incorporated what we call PSPSs. That's our power safety, our public safety power shutoffs, because that's a real event. We've experienced that, and our certs, in the event that we were to have extended power outages, we could potentially activate those folks. So we're excited about what we're doing in those areas. In addition, we hosted a CERT class, which is actually, it's not an easy class to go through. It's about 21 hours. It's several nights. The fire department puts it on. We are able to host it at our Emergency Operations Center. And we had 5 people from Monte Sereno graduate from that class in November. And that's 5 doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. And so thank you for the folks that participated, and it really helps for you to prepare yourselves and prepare to help your community when there's a time of need. The last thing I want to talk about, because I'm excited about it, the chief has really asked us to push forward with emergency preparedness and how we, again, can leverage our resources. So this year at the holiday parade, we're going to bring our DART team together with our CERT and our Aries Races into our command post, and we're actually going to activate our CERT folks to be able to be out in the parade, to be able to show who they are, and they may have somebody that is simple as a lost child, and that may be simple when you find that child, but before you found that child, there's a lot of, as you all can imagine, it's tense, and you want to find that child as soon as possible. So the more people we can get out there to radio back to the communications center, our CERT folks and our Aries Races, pass that information on to the police department, we believe will help create even a more safe event than we have in the past. Having said that, that ends the formal report, and we are available for questions.
Question? I just wanted you guys to know that we have 3 CERT members here and 3 in the crowd here.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you. So we have no oral communications for this portion? Okay, so let's move on to consent calendar. And for the consent calendar, I think we're going to take it one at a time. And so for item 1 or 2, is there anybody that wishes to speak on the council?
Yeah, I'd like to pull item number 1, the minutes. We had a long discussion about this SB2 last time, and what ended up in the minutes, and I assume that it's as a result of the resolution not being modified with respect to our conversation and our agreement in the last council meeting. So what is contained in here is still an authorization of the city manager to execute the standard agreement. And I went back to the tape, and my recollection of what I was voting for was that we as a council would have opportunity and desire to take a look at that agreement before moving forward, and not have the city manager just directly execute it without having council review. So I escalated this to our city attorney, and so I think we should pull this one from the consent calendar, and I'm not quite sure how we're supposed to deal with this, but.
What do you recommend we do to proceed?
So, there was this discussion, as Councilmember LaBouvet alluded to, but my memory of the actual motion on the floor that was voted on was a motion to approve the resolution in the form that it was drafted. That being said, certainly it's within the council's purview to direct staff to bring the contract back for further review, and I understand.
Yeah,
Staff is.
That's staff's full intention, given the discussion that went on, that you are interested in seeing what that standard agreement is. So before who's ever in the city manager position executes it, it will be brought to you all so that you can
And then separately speaking, you know, as we had previously alluded to during the prior council meeting, you know, council certainly has the authority to make the changes to the resolutions. I'm not sure that the council actually discussed making any changes to the resolution, so the vote was what it was. But separately, if the council wants to go back and put another item on the agenda to go and make further changes to the resolution, there is an issue with perhaps the state not awarding a grant because those resolutions are provided as a template form for the council to adopt. Typically, these kinds of grant programs do not want modifications to the resolution because they don't want to go through the process of selecting a awardee that might not take the grant.
So are we changing the body of the resolution or just the initial first paragraph?
I mean, at this point, you know, the council already voted on the resolution. I don't recall there being a motion to modify the resolution. So it would be considered adopted. However, the council certainly can direct staff to, you know, bring this back on the next agenda if they want to further discuss it.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that we bring it back and we modify that language as per our discussion. I mean, it was quite clear when I went back to the audio that I made the statement as a council item directly, and then right after that, Councilmember Elahi said, that makes sense, go forward, and when the documents come in, look at it. And then we immediately moved to a vote. And so I think that it was our inexperience. We didn't stop and make a specific motion, but that was a long, drawn-out discussion, and I think we were tiring of it at that point. And so I think we just were procedurally incorrect. I think we should go back and correct that mistake.
I guess, if I may, I'd suggest, I mean, if there's a fine line we can walk here between modifying the prior resolution, which was the concern that it is a template provided that is really expected to be followed, versus is there a way that we can simply confirm this, that staff is going to bring it to the council, as opposed to, I mean, we've got the nod of agreement, and we had the nod of agreement last time, but can we make that a direction that has been agreed on? Does that need to go into a resolution? Could it be a separate resolution or addendum?
There is no legal requirement that you guys pass a formal resolution directing staff to bring back the contract. I mean, I'm looking at Jeannie.
I'm not going to move forward with the contract without bringing it to you guys. I don't care who else is in charge, but it's clear to me that you as a council would really want to review the standard agreement should we be awarded a grant. So it's with all sincerity that we're going to bring it to you all at the earliest
Right.
council meeting available.
I
Again,
mean,
it's not out yet. We don't know even when the grants will be awarded. So I think we'll probably keep you updated as to the status of the application. And then when they do come out with the standard agreements, should we be awarded a grant, bring it to you as soon as practical so you can look it over and identify any concerns you may have and what opportunities we may have, if any, to negotiate that agreement.
So what would it take to write?
I was just curious, has the application been filed already?
Can I ask my question first?
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, what would it take to write a separate resolution?
To direct staff
Yeah,
to do what I just said?
yeah.
I mean,
Well, I don't know what to put in it other than what you said, except it's not needed. So, I mean, I guess the question is, it's going to happen, resolution or not. So when's the next council meeting? December or January? Yeah, it's
17th?
timing-wise, I don't think it has to come back to the next meeting, because again, this whole state is going to be submitting grant applications. So it's going to be a while before they get to that. So maybe if you absolutely needed to see it in resolution form, which again, from staff standpoint, we're not going anywhere without you guys seeing this standard agreement. It's not in our interest to bypass the council. So I think early January did feel compelled.
Okay, so
have to put it
although
in
so
resolution.
it sounds like we submitted the resolution as is with this with this language, but I think by verbal directive and at least a quorum of, or a majority of 3, we can direct staff to bring this agreement back to us before any authorization happens. Does everyone
Are
agree
you
to
guys
that?
okay with that?
I don't know, are we trying to get the agreement back, or are we just trying to get,
No.
get
No,
direction?
so-
The direction I understand from council is that the council wants to see the standard form agreement before it's executed by the city manager, and certainly staff will do that.
And given the logistics, it's not really necessary to pull that resolution back if it's already submitted. But, so basically, we're just making an official directive to the staff that we want to see it before it gets authorized.
Well, the contract would have to be accepted by the city council anyway, right? Whatever agreement
The
comes in.
the problem was, we authorized that the manager could execute it, but no one has seen it, so we're going to take a look at it.
So we'll bring it back to you. Should we be awarded a grant, once those agreements come out, we'll make sure that we agendize it on the next available meeting once we get it, so that you guys can review it. And then again, we'll note any time frame in which it may need to be executed. And then, should you want to see if you can make any changes to it, we'll have to work through that. But again, that's another big question with state documents. But
So I have one more procedural question. So what's the implication of not approving the minutes as is? So now that we have this sort of new agreement in place, or new directive in place,
I mean, I'm not.
do we just acknowledge that this happened, or how do we acknowledge that
I
this
mean,
happened?
I certainly would suggest that the council move forward to approve the minutes. To the extent necessary, you could approve the minutes with a modification to the minutes that indicates that the council gave that prior direction to the staff and to the city manager to bring the contract back before it was executed.
Okay.
As part of the minutes.
That would work for me.
So shall we move on? Okay, so let's do the warrant list, number 2. No?
No comment.
Let's do number 3 then, which is the weed abatement program.
So, can I speak?
Yes, please.
So for weed abatement, I need to recuse on this because someone on the list is my neighbor.
And so the procedure for recusal for
Get out.
actually, for the consent calendar, it is not, but you do need to state that you have a conflict of interest due to ownership of real property within 500 feet.
I have a conflict of interest as a result of real property within 500 feet of someone on the list of the 2020 weed abatement program.
Okay, so shall we move to 4? Law Enforcement Services Fund. Any questions on that? No? 5, final map of the Montalvo Oaks subdivision. Is there somebody who needs to recuse themselves as well? No? Okay. 6 and
So I wanted to certainly ask some questions. I'm not sure if we want to pull this entirely or just start with
On
some questions
number
on Montalvo Oaks 5.
Okay.
So should I just ask questions first, and then we'll see if, and I appreciate Jeannie reached out to me today, and I wasn't prepared to ask her these questions yet. But first of all, I saw mentioned in there is a deadline to act on this step. Do you have, when that actual deadline is that we need to approve this, I guess, map, final map by, in the schedule that we're on in terms of when it was submitted and where we're at in the process?
so I'm going to have our city engineer come up and answer any specific questions you may have. I think she's more prepared to do
All
that
right.
than I.
Great, thanks.
That's me. Hi, Jessica Kahn, city engineer. So typically, a map expires within 3 years of the tentative map being approved. So I believe that happened in June of 2008, so it's a long time before the map expires.
Okay. And then there was some language, which I suspect was form language in there. It said that in the staff report, this map as submitted substantially complies with the tentative map that was previously shown. Are there insubstantial changes or changes that should be brought to our attention, or was that just form language and it essentially exactly complies with what was done on the tentative?
So that is form language that's in the Subdivision Map Act. It's a statement that you're required to make. The only difference that is not substantial, which was also confirmed by a land surveyor who also reviewed this map, was I believe some of the, and Jeannie, correct me, the condos there were 3 and now there's 2. They're a duplex rather than a 3-unit condo. So I think the number of units has changed slightly. No?
Actually, the numbers are the same, and it may have been, the separation of the lots due to PG&E requirements or something like that. So it's the same number of units, it's in the same configuration, but it's really just lines on the map to make it okay for PG&E to do what they need to do.
Okay, nothing that makes for a visual change in the weight of the thing. And then I guess my last question was, this came up on this agenda, and this agenda obviously was delayed a bit while officially published, I think, on last Wednesday. Didn't get blasted out to the public on the e-blast until Monday. I have not received any comment from anybody that they wanted to make further comment on this. But in the event that the public wants time to take a look at this, I'd certainly be willing to delay it a week if we have the time to do that, or 1 meeting, 2 weeks here. If there is some reason that the final map should receive input, or if this is just something that is entirely technical, I'm fine with it moving ahead because I haven't heard anything.
So I can actually probably answer that question. Is the city has a ministerial duty to approve a final map as long as it meets the conditions that are imposed on the tentative map. So basically, the city can't legally deny a final map as long as it's in substantial compliance with the requirements that are imposed on the tentative map. So.
And I believe the agenda was posted last Wednesday. The e-blast is a courtesy process, so it was posted and available for public review in the amount of time required.
Okay, so are you okay?
So I'm fine with that.
Okay, so shall we go on to number 6, California Code of Regulations? 7, Municipal Code relating to buildings and construction.
I think for item 7, I'm not totally unhappy with where we landed in this compromise, but just for consistency, I voted no against this in the previous vote, and so as a matter of the consent calendar, I also would like to maintain that vote.
So for that, I would suggest pulling item 7, if you would like to have a separate vote on that from the rest of the consent calendar, and to the extent that the minutes need changing, I would also recommend pulling those and introducing a separate motion to revise the minutes as the council may desire.
Okay, so then are you recommending that I take a motion to approve items 1 to 6 and leave 7 out?
2 to.
I'm sorry, 2 to 6?
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Luthold, a second by Mayor Turner. You should be able to vote. This is for items 2 through 6.
Am I allowed to vote on this? Just a blanket yes?
Yes, and the minutes will reflect your recusal on item number 3.
Okay, thank you.
All votes are in, and it passes 5-0. with the exception of item number 3.
Okay, so shall we move on to item number 8?
I believe we need
Fix the
items
minutes.
1 and 7.
One and seven.
1 and 7, yes. I have a motion.
I'll move.
Is this on just one or both?
This is on one, so
This
it's
is just one,
this is a
yes.
motion to modify the minutes to reflect that the council wishes to see the agreement prior to authorization.
And staff has agreed
And
to
s-
do that.
And staff has agreed to do that.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion. Or we can do it on electronic.
So the motion is to approve the minutes with a modification indicating that council provided direction to staff to bring the agreement back prior to execution, and staff agreed to do so.
Very good, Sergio.
Yeah, I'm realizing from this discussion last round that it might really be helpful for us to restate the actual motion before
Yes.
the vote every time.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Oh,
Okay, so all votes are in, and that passes 5-0.
okay, so now we do 7.
So I'll move to have that ordinance amendment approved. Item 7 approved.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Elahi, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Lawler. Votes are in. Passes 4-1.
Okay, so now let's move to new business. We have 3, and we'll take them one at a time. The first one is the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. Do we have a staff report on this?
So,
You have someone speak?
So I don't believe we actually have a staff report on this.
it's just a resolution.
This was a resolution that came as a result of a public speaker, I believe, coming to council and requesting that the council adopt this resolution. I am blanking on exactly who that person or organization was at this point. Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, you were there, that's right.
And I believe we did get some direction to staff to put this back on an agenda for a future consideration. So here it is.
So
Would you like
are
to
there
speak?
any questions?
I have some questions. On the surface, I'm not opposed to this. I just don't know a lot about it. And since this is sort of a federal level directive, I for one would like to, A, know a little bit more about it, and B, what are our state and federal representatives, are they endorsing this or not? And, if we could get a little more information on who's behind this. And, when we get a voter pamphlet, there are like, the pros and the cons people on either side of these issues. And so I don't currently have a decision on this, and so I would appreciate to investigate further.
Okay, so are you going to make that a motion, or
Well, maybe we
do you
should
have a
have them.
question?
Yeah, maybe we should have the speaker present and give us the pros and cons, and that would be helpful. Do you want to get back, and if that's okay with the mayor? Well, we have a resolution in front of us, but we need a little bit more clarification on the pros and cons of the resolution. If you can present that.
Would you like,
Okay.
like to step up and maybe give them another overview of it and see if they have any further questions that you may be able to answer. Up to the,
Up to the podium, sir.
yeah. Sorry.
Get back to my notes here. I have these in the right order. Let me just kind of go over what I did last time. You know, I'm a member of a organization called CCL, which is the Citizens Climate Lobby. And so the objective of this is that we're trying to get to all the Congress, on the federal basis, all the consul or congressmen, senators, and representatives to pass a bill, that would be submitted to Congress. Its number is H.R. 763. And that bill has been submitted to Congress for about a year now. And what I'm trying to, or what we're trying to do is to back up our efforts to get that bill passed. And I can go through a little bit again of what we talked about last time to clarify things, hopefully. Let me just kind of go over that. I think nearly everyone is aware that we're experiencing the harmful effect of climate change: extreme weather, longer droughts, increased severity of wildfires, and the melting of the polar ice caps, to name but a few. Monte Sereno is directly affected and threatened by some of these harmful changes. The Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors recently passed a resolution declaring that we are in a climate emergency and urging immediate action. I'm here to request that you pass a resolution of support for the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act of 2019, H.R. 763. It is a bipartisan bill presently before the U.S. Congress. Congressman Eshoo is one of the original co-sponsors. This bill will enact a rising carbon fee on fossil fuels at the point of extraction. All of the net fees collected from this revenue-neutral bill will be returned to American families in the form of a dividend check each month that can be spent any way they want. As the fee rises, this bill will discourage burning fossil fuels that contribute to the accumulation of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. By using the free market, we will encourage the use of clean fuels, the development of green tech, create jobs, and save lives without growing government or creating a new government bureaucracy. During the first 12 years of implementing this bill, U.S. emissions will be decreased by 40%. Over 500 cities and over 300 notable individuals endorsed the bill, including Dr. James Hansen, who raised the climate alarm 30 years ago, and George Shultz, former U.S. State and Treasury Secretary. 60 local governments, including the County of Los Angeles, endorsed the bill. It's important that Congress hears from local elected leaders like yourselves so they know how important this issue is to you and that you have their back. Will you direct staff to prepare a resolution in support of H.R. 763? I've submitted suggested language to Terry Blount, and we will be happy to work with staff and provide them with any information they need. Thank you for your considerations. So that's what I went over a couple of months ago. Since then, a couple of key events. The city of San Jose did approve this in the last couple of weeks. So your question of how much backing does it have? It has significant backing. Like I mentioned, there are 300 or 500 cities have also signed this. And So we're looking for this kind of support by going to all cities that we can and really asking for supporting of this bill. So that's the basics of it. We're an organization called Citizens Climate Lobby. And really it is a lobby organization by volunteers. There's about 150,000 volunteers now worldwide backing this particular bill. So we're asking cities, in our case specifically Monte Sereno, to endorse that particular bill that is in Congress now.
Okay. So do you have enough information here?
Yeah, I believe so. So has this particular resolution, you looked at this resolution that's in front of us by any chance? Did you get a chance to look? Did you get a chance to look at the resolution
Yeah.
that's in front of us?
Yeah, what I did last time is submitted kind of a draft copy of it to Terry.
So this
And
matched.
I did get, I think the only comments I got were one at the end where it said that this should be sent to the president, the vice president, Congress, and the president and the vice president was removed from it. That's the only change I saw from what I actually had brought to the meeting last time.
Yeah, so my question was going to be, do you know who else has approved this particular or similar resolution in this county?
Yeah, well, it is, like I say, San Jose is the most recent one. It's pretty much identical to what I submitted.
Got it, thank you. And Santa Clara County?
Santa Clara County, we did one before the start of this session of Congress, and it had been signed off by them. We may have to go back and have them re-sign it or something, because these things get, I think, canceled after 2 years, or, as I understand it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other questions?
I have something.
Yes.
So, I mean, we know the intended impact, but we don't necessarily know the unintended impacts of this particular bill. And I'm concerned that we would be making a statement on behalf of our residents, and I don't want to presume that that's what they want. So I would like to perhaps postpone this and put this out to our residents and poll them to see how they feel about this. Is that something that,
So do you want to make a motion? for that?
I move to pull this and to poll our community to see if they can support this.
Okay, how does that process work?
We will postpone this, and we will send out a poll to our community and
Okay.
ask them questions and see, you know,
What kind of
see what kind of
feedback
feedback we get. And so
Good.
that way we are truly representing our community.
Okay.
And I think we also need a staff report on it, because this is just a resolution that's just popping up. But I think somebody, the staff, who would be able to put a staff report giving us the pros and the cons and
You know,
some relevant
I
analysis.
have pulled up the bill in front of me, and, you know, I can't imagine there's going to be an in-depth staff analysis of this bill, but I can sort of summarize what the Congressional Research Service, which is the nonpartisan body that advises Congress, summarizes the bill as. They describe this bill imposes a fee on the carbon content of fuels, including crude oil, natural gas, coal, and any other product derived from those fuels that will be used so as to emit greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The fee is imposed on the producers or importers of the fuels and is equal to the greenhouse gas content of the fuel multiplied by the carbon fee rate. The rate would begin at $15 in 2019 and increases by $10 each year, and is subject to adjustments based on the progress in meeting specified emission reduction targets. The bill also imposes a specified fee on fluorinated greenhouse gases. The bill includes exemptions for fuels used for agricultural and non-emitting purposes, exemptions for fuels used by the armed forces, rebates for facilities that capture and sequester carbon dioxide, and border adjustment provisions that require certain fees or refunds for carbon-intensive products that are exported or imported. The fees must be deposited in the Carbon Dividend Trust Fund and used for administrative expenses and dividend payments to U.S. citizens or lawful residents. The fees must be decommissioned when emissions levels and monthly dividend payments fall below specified levels. The bill also suspends certain regulations that limit greenhouse gas emissions. The suspensions expire if the emission targets established by this bill are not reached after a specified time period. So
Okay,
that's,
I guess to Mayor Pro Tem Lawler's point, in terms of the unintended consequences, we need to be able to outline that and talk to our citizens about the fees that they're going to be charged.
I'd like to make one more comment, because thank you for refreshing my memory. And I did read through this resolution, and I do remember now that you did come and present to us. And the one thing that bothers me a little bit about just the way this bill is structured, I'm actually for carbon dividend. But the way this is structured is that it refunds monies to basically everyone. And so the idea here is that you impose carbon dividends. Naturally, the suppliers are going to pass those costs along to the public in some way, shape, or form. So it's essentially shows up as a tax. And that can be a good thing. But usually, in my impression, is the way carbon dividend funds are usually used is to then go reinvest in infrastructure and clean energy rather than distributing broadly to the public, right? And so I don't see how this really drives the innovation cycle around clean energy and infrastructure investments. And furthermore, there's a claim in here about a 40% increase in national employment. And so if you're just distributing monies back to households, I don't really see how this contributes to employment either. And so some of these things are just a little bit, don't add up for me technically. And so I don't want to vote no, but I also don't want to vote yes on this.
So what are you going to do?
So I think that we should delay it until we can find out some answers.
And Sergio, appreciate your reading of the thing, but it would help if you can concise that, present a staff report and something that we can then put our, that we can send out to the residents, because I think we are all about transparency and not just passing a thing that comes up on the first talk. So that would be helpful, I don't know if you can do that or somebody else. So we have some suggestions or recommendations or neutral details on the pros and the cons and.
So
what it
Sergio,
means.
do we have a motion then?
do we have a motion?
To delay.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lawler.
Put this over for later on with the staff
More
report, right?
information.
Yes.
And then the direction to staff,
To-
that be in the motion?
Yeah, and let's see, it's a motion to continue item to the subsequent meeting and direction to staff to do a poll, a community poll, is that?
To provide a report on
Research
it,
and
basically.
community poll.
But as to what we're signing on to.
So I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lawler, a second by Councilmember LaBouvet. Vote. And that's. All votes are in, and it passes 5-0 to continue and conduct outreach and gather information.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, so how do we need to work with the staff then in terms of getting to the bottom of some discussion, points you had, we can do that. We've got some excellent people involved, and so is it up to us now to contact you guys in terms of, hey, we're ready to start some work on this?
Yeah, give us a week. I would continue to work with Terry in his capacity as city manager, as long as he's here, and then it will get passed on to the appropriate people
So
once he's
I'll
going to
contact
be
you.
back on the 11th.
Yeah, I saw
December
something
11th.
on the email there, so
Yeah.
we'll do that then.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Let's move on to item 9, which is to adopt a resolution, to form an ad hoc committee for SB 2, the grant committee, and to designate 2 council members to serve on that committee. So Sergio, do I get a motion now to adopt the resolution to establish the SB 2 grant first, and then we vote on getting 2 ad hoc members of the committee?
I mean,
Is that what you want to do?
I,
Yes. Okay, so let's go.
yeah, it's sort of up to the council's
Okay,
pleasure.
Let's go ahead and do that. Somebody make a
So
motion.
discuss the item and/or make a motion to either adopt or modify or whatever,
I assume we have no public comment on this item?
so.
No.
Okay.
Okay, I'll start, because in the last meeting, I suggested that we we form an ad hoc committee to drive some of these issues and coordinate with staff. And so, so I guess if we take it in multiple parts, but on the other hand, the resolution as drafted, I had some
Changes to it, right?
modifications to, and so can we take this in two parts? One is form the ad hoc committee and get volunteers for that. And then the second part would be, what is the charter? What is-
To your
what is-
charter.
What is the
Okay.
charter of the ad hoc
So
committee?
let me go ahead and do that. So do I have 2 volunteers to serve on the SB2 Grant Ad Hoc Committee?
I would nominate Mayor Pro Tem Lawler and Sean to work on that.
So I was going to suggest certainly that Mr. Lavouvet should be on this. He brought this up. He wants to be one of the leaders on this, so I would.
Do I have a second volunteer? Are you volunteering?
I would be willing to work on it. I am Brown Buddy on the initial discussion with Mr. Lavouvet on this. So, so I'm certainly willing to work with him on that as a volunteer. If other people want to be on the committee, that's also fine. We can entertain that.
I don't see anybody jumping, so let's go ahead and assign.
Thank you, but I will respectfully decline.
So we will have Councilmember Labouvet and Councilmember Luthold. So now, Councilmember Labouvet, you want to modify the resolution?
Yes, so, so we had traded some emails earlier as Brown Buddies with Sergio, but I guess now is the kind of formal time to record that. And Sean, so I contributed one, and then Sean contributed some more red lines, and so here is, go ahead and pass those out and take a look at the language.
Did you have any thoughts on this? Have you seen this already?
So do you want us to just read this into the record?
Yeah, that would probably be the best approach to this, in terms of putting it before the council for consideration in the public.
Okay, so do you want me to do it, Sean?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So-
think you can just read the changes, right? I mean, the rest of it is already in the record.
Well, I didn't do a red line versus the original,
I have a
because
red
I,
line here.
I started drafting
This is
it different?
This is 2 layers.
two layers of red line. I didn't keep track of what the, okay, so I'll just
Raise
start
that
reading.
question.
Research recently enacted legislation associated with the development and streamlining of housing production. Research strategies, municipal code, and ordinance provisions implemented by other cities and develop unique ideas to further the goals of Monte Sereno General Plan associated with housing and land use. Enlist the help of outside consultants with the approval of a statement of work and budget by the City Council regarding the developing SB2 compliant approaches to possible changes to the municipal code and/or general plan as it relates to objective standards and other changes as appropriate to guide the future development in order to bring such options to the council for consideration. That's clearly a lawyer wrote that last piece. Determine which of the enacted legislation impacts the city and which strategies, municipal code, ordinance provisions, updates should be targeted for implementation and approval by the City Council. Seek recommendations from residents, Site and Architectural Commission, and the City Council on identified work products. Work with the city staff to develop a work program to implement the identified work products. Determine which of the work products should be submitted for reimbursement under the SB2 grant, should the city be awarded one.
Staff has just one question, and it's maybe just how it's worded. The third bullet, which says enlist the help of outside consultants with the approval of a statement of work and budget by the City Council regarding to it. Is that help? Help. Hire a consultant to help develop the RFP, or develop the RFP to hire a consultant to do the work. Does that make sense? Does that question make sense? So enlist the help of outside consultants with the approval of a statement of work. So does that mean we put together an RFP? What's a statement of work? Is that an RFP?
No, statement of work is,
What we're going to do?
is basically what are we going to do?
What we're going to do. So,
So this is really, this bullet is all about the idea phase. And so, I think the council has been asking for, even before I was on the council, during the strategy sessions, to go out and do some strategic planning with some outside consultants to come up with some good ideas and some very actionable municipal code modifications with respect to housing, SB2 compliant approaches and so forth. So yes, this would be
hiring consultants.
hiring
to go out
consultants
and-
to
So
go.
do
So
the
I would,
work,
I would
to
say
do the
let's
state-
just say that.
Yeah,
It's a
to-
little less
To
confusing.
do the statement of work and to actually do the SB2 compliant approaches. Yeah,
So instead of enlist the help, hire a consultant.
Hire consultants to support the city's efforts in developing a statement of work and
So separately, I will raise the issue that there is a problem with delegating the authority to hire a consultant without any sort of, budgetary limitation or anything like that. The council can't delegate wholesale, that sort of authority to an ad hoc committee without putting some sort of constraints on that.
I think that was the point of the original language here. With the approval of a statement of work, the idea was to develop the statement of work about what we would be doing, come back to the council for approval of that statement of work and hiring.
Yeah,
And
okay.
budget.
Okay.
So really, it's working together to develop what help is needed and appropriate and what it's going to cost. And that, we develop that statement of work in working with the staff and bring it for approval to hire. So so the way it was just worded now as hire the outside consultants to support the city development, I think we have to develop the plan of what they're going to do for us, get the approval,
So
and then hire them.
is the thought that it would then instead be enlist the help of outside consultants upon the approval of a statement of work and budget by the city council?
could you say that again, Sergio?
Yeah, upon,
Who's developing the statement of
because
work?
it's contingent upon.
The ad hoc
approval.
committee.
Okay, so it's.
So it would
Within
be,
the city organization, we're developing that statement of work.
Yes.
And once we've developed that and agreed on it,
so for the third bullet point, it would probably be develop a statement of work and enlist the help of outside consultants upon the approval of a statement of work and budget by city council.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, so Sergio, do we need a motion?
I suspect that you would need a motion.
So this-
So I'll make a motion to approve the language as modified and as discussed.
do I have a second?
I have a second by Councilmember Turner. All votes are in, it passes 5-0 as modified.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to item 10. The next item is the approval of agreement with Stephen Leonardis for employment as city manager. So I imagine that you're here from the audience tonight. Let me first go through some procedural item before I open the floor to public comments. First is Sergio will be presenting a briefing on this item. We will then have a report from a member of the ad hoc committee on the recruitment of the city manager. The council then will be given the opportunity to ask questions and get responses. Please fill out a blue card if you haven't already. May I remind everyone here to be respectful and to respectfully challenge the idea and not the person. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Then I will call on any persons interested in speaking on this item. The public comment portion, after everybody has spoken, will be closed. I will then take it back to council so council can ask further clarification. Then the matter will be discussed and acted upon by the council. At that point in time, there will be no further comments from the audience until once the hearing is closed, unless invited by the council. So let me go ahead and ask Sergio to please give us a staff report on the compensation and the employment agreement.
Yes, so as previously discussed, this city council met and in closed session decided to extend a conditional offer of employment to Steve Leonardis. As required by the Brown Act, the city council must act on a contract and on terms of compensation in open session. Before it can do so, it has to receive an oral report summarizing what that compensation package is. So I am going to do that for you. This proposed agreement with Stephen Leonardis to serve as the new city manager includes the following compensation provisions. He would be paid $180,000 annually to be paid in the same installments as other city employees. The contract at present provides for 10 days of vacation in accordance with other city resolutions applicable to city employees. Sick leave would be provided under the contract, accrued at 1 workday for each calendar month actively employed. The contract also provides for 10 days of administrative leave that does not accrue. Other fringe benefits are provided in accordance with applicable city council resolutions that govern all employees. Under the terms of those resolutions and this contract, the new city manager would be entitled to participation in CalPERS at the 2% at age 55 plan for classic members with a 36-month final compensation period. There would be a fringe benefit allowed at $700 a month for purchase of additional health benefits as needed. The contract also provides for an auto allowance of $400 per month. The city manager would also be allowed to participate in health insurance that is provided to other employees, which is provided at the PERS choice level. And additionally, the city manager will be entitled to 12 paid holidays in accordance with city council resolutions. The contract also provides for severance. The severance provision for termination without cause during the first 36 months of employment would be 12 months aggregate base pay. And after the first 36 months of employment, the contract provides for 6 months of aggregate base pay in the event of termination without cause. In terms of, so that is the summary of the oral compensation provisions.
Okay, so do I have any questions from council? No?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. My understanding is the November 19th closed session, when that was over, the report that was put down was that there was no decision made at that session.
I may have accidentally added the wrong date into the report. That may have been the November 5th.
Okay, so my understanding is the November 5th date, what was approved was a different contract, not the contract that was approved on November 19th. So we are talking about 2 different contracts on 2 different dates. So we don't really have an approval by the city council of or in a closed session of the November 19th contract. So I think it's premature to consider that contract.
So
that has not been approved.
The city council does not vote on a contract in closed session. The city council voted on providing a conditional offer of employment on November 5th, which was reported out.
Yeah, but that offer was not accepted, and the report on November 19th said there was nothing done in closed session. So there is no offer that the city council approved on November 19th that could have gone out, because there was no report saying that any offer was made. So I think we need to go back in closed session, approve that offer, and then proceed.
I'm not exactly sure as to what you are discussing.
What I'm discussing is we don't have an offer that was approved by the city council. The only offer we approved was in the November 5th session, and that offer was not accepted by the applicant. So the offer that was then made on the November 19th session was never approved by city council. At least the report that was made on the closed session, if you look at the agenda minutes, says there was nothing approved.
Well-
There was nothing to report.
Yeah, that-
And then all of a sudden, we now have
So without getting into the context of a closed session discussion, which we certainly can't do here, I will say that, this contract is now here before the city council, due to city council's direction to negotiate terms on November 19th. And so that is why we are here.
Yeah, but that was not reported out, that there was an offer that was going to go out. So my question then is, are we now considering the entire employment issue as to whether to vote for the applicant to become city manager? And is at this time that the city council is going to make that decision?
In short, before somebody can become the city manager, yes, they need an employment agreement. So, yes,
Okay.
in answer to your question, yeah, you're considering the employment agreement, and by its very nature, you'd also be considering the appointment.
Okay. I just want to get that clarified.
So I guess I want to clarify, if I may, what Councilmember Elahi just said, which is, on November 5th, it was reported out, a conditional offer of employment was made,
Yes.
and that was rejected, and changes were requested. No subsequent approval of a modified conditional offer of employment ever occurred, since it was reported as no action on November 19th. So I think what I understand Councilmember Elahi saying is the negotiation was never finalized to the point of a conditional offer of employment with the terms that are now before us here. So it seems like a step has been missed in that a conditional offer was approved to go out for negotiation. It was rejected. There were a variety of new terms, and then nothing further was ever approved.
Yes, because the council can't approve an employment agreement in closed session. It would have to do so here in open session, which is what the council is being asked to consider.
Yeah, but at least the council has to approve the offer that should go out, and that should be reported that an offer has gone out. That never was done.
So, short answer, the council provided me with direction to negotiate further language changes, which is what resulted in the agreement before you here today.
Are there any other questions? No?
Yeah, just left some more. The summary that you provided does not provide anything about the very serious issue that the applicant can continue with their real estate work. And I guess maybe under the government code, you may only need to report the benefits, but it's my understanding there is no reported case of any city council ever approving an agreement where a city manager is allowed to do a side business of real estate or any other business. And I don't believe you found anyone that does that. Is that
So
correct?
I did look into this issue with lawyers in our firm who are city attorneys, and no one in my firm was able to indicate they had any experience with that. That said, I actually received a phone call from the town's attorney, who has previously served as city attorney in other cities in the central area, and he indicated to me that he had experience with other smaller jurisdictions where their executive team is allowed to have outside employment.
And that means the city manager was allowed to have outside
Yes.
employment? And he was being paid $200,000 a year approximately?
I couldn't tell you.
All right. So I think that's an important issue because it creates a serious conflict for the city, obviously, to have a person who's also doing side work and being paid $200,000 a year. He's also receiving 10 days of administrative leave, which could be used for the side business. He's being also paid for vacation pay, which is going to be used for the side business. He's also being paid sick leave, which can also be used for the side business. He's also being paid $700 a month additional fringe benefits, which can also be used for the side business. And additionally, he's being allowed a $400 car allowance, which can again also be used for the site business. So that's a serious issue that should be pointed out in the report, that's also what he's being allowed to do. The other conflict, and I guess I don't know if you're getting into the contract yet or not, is, well, it says exclusively he'll work for the city, but then there's a huge hole which says he can continue with his real estate broker license as long as, or real estate broker business as long as he does not engage with the property in Monte Sereno. That doesn't give us enough of a separation, because it's not just the property in Monte Sereno that's an issue, it's also individuals who reside in Monte Sereno. This allows him to go ahead and find properties for a person living in Monte Sereno, in Los Gatos, or in neighborhood cities, or anywhere else in the county, and I think that would be a huge conflict. And I think the definition of individuals, generally when it is used in legal agreements, it goes to insiders, which means any relationship of the individual, or by family or corporation or business. This agreement does not do that. So those are just the preliminary context. I mean, obviously there's a lot of other issues with this agreement that need to be looked at. But we'll raise them as we go along. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So, are there any other questions from any of the council members? No? So let me go ahead and move on to Councilmember Labouvet. And Councilmember Labouvet will give us a report on the ad hoc committee that we formed on the recruitment of the city manager.
Okay, Jeannie, you have to wake up. Sorry. So do you have the PowerPoint slides? Okay, so we're challenged from an IT perspective.
Not challenged. Put a finger, push an arrow.
Give her a chance.
So we have to, so we have to send smoke signals to each other so that we stay in sync.
No, I'm in tune with you, so I'll know when to flip to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Wait, there we go.
Okay, so this is a city manager recruitment process ad hoc committee report. And this ad hoc committee was formed by Mayor Turner and myself, Councilmember Labouvet.
Can you hear in the background, in the back there?
Can you hear? I'll speak up.
Could you, could you
I'll
speak
I'll
louder?
speak up.
Could you put your,
My microphone's on. Oh, I'll get it close? Okay, okay.
Yeah, while you're giving the report, to the extent it touches any closed session items, I would assume, so you'll let us know.
Sure. I tried to be as factual as possible in this report, so it's a very procedural type report. So here we go. So the motivation. The city manager resignation. City manager informed the council of his intention to resign on July 15th, 2019 in closed session. Subsequently, the city manager submitted a formal resignation by letter on July 19th, 2019, and he requested his last day, or basically informed his last day would be December 20th, 2019, and no severance payment for voluntary resignation. So as a result, a Brown Act work group was established, and on July 16th, 2019, Mayor Turner and Councilmember Labouvet partnered on city manager recruitment facilitation. Both have significant executive level recruiting experience. A closed session was scheduled for August 6th to discuss next steps. The 5-month notice period versus the 60-day minimum that's required in the city manager contract enabled us to perform a very rigorous city manager recruitment process, potential for city manager overlap transition period, and potential for a new city manager early start had we made the decision in a more timely way. Next slide, please. So the council established and agreed to the city manager recruitment process.
I think now you're getting into a closed session discussion on what happened as far as council agreed. That's a closed session item. Because there was opposition. And I don't know if you need to start discussing what actually happened in that closed session.
So I think these are kind of factual events that that the public needs to know.
Well, of course they need to know.
Basically, this is a
Of course they need to know,
process.
but do you want to?
Was any of this put out in terms of publicly available documents?
No.
Or sort of put forth in the, request for proposals for city manager
There are, no.
in terms of laying out the process?
Well, this is, no.
Well,
Now that we're in open session, am I not allowed to?
in an
basically-
abundance of caution, I would recommend that you skip it. And to the extent, you can certainly describe the process the city council actually followed with, as long as you don't really go into the details of what you actually discussed in closed session.
Oh,
Basically
and-
what we
and-
have here.
this is a process presentation. There's no discussions.
And I don't have a problem with discussing closed session item, as long as then we can all discuss closed session item. I don't want it to be just a one-way
Oh, no, this-
presentation.
So this
So
is.
if you want to
so-
open up the closed session discussions, if the city council wants to open it up,
No,
let's
we're-
do that.
this is-
I mean, I'd
we're-
love to
we're
do
not-
that.
We're not talking about anything in
Well,
closed session.
talking about everything that was discussed.
We're talking here about the process that we go through. One of the feedback that we got from a lot of the citizens is they didn't know, was this sprung up on them all of a sudden? And the answer is no, we've been going through this since August 6th, July
Out of an
2019.
abundance of caution, I think the easiest way to address this would be for the council right now to vote to discuss as an open session item the hiring process as a whole.
Okay,
I move to discuss the hiring process as a whole.
I second.
I want to comment on that, which is, I've read the League of Cities document about the Brown Act and what we can discuss in closed session, and that the discussions that occur in closed sessions appear under the Brown Act to be sacred, and they cannot be talked about, and that certainly hobbles those of us who would like to express things that went on. But I don't think we have the option of opening up to the public something that was put into the closed session. Yes, we're springing this on the public, but if we open up discussion of what happened first, I think that's a violation of the law. We can have the entire process in public, or we have the process in closed session. Similar to a mediation, we're not allowed to speak in court about what was settled or done in mediations. There's a law that says you can't do it, even though y'all participated in it. So that's the problem we have. I'd look to our counsel for that. But I think the moment that the content of the closed session is discussed, then we have to start the process in public from the beginning. And if I'm wrong, then we can deal with that. But I think talking about this, what occurred in closed session, this is the problem. We didn't use a recruiter, and now you want to say what we did. Well, what we did was in that room, and I wish we could talk about it, but I don't believe the Brown Act allows us to.
And if I may ask the council's,
Yeah, and I'd like to get that thing off for now till we get a response to this.
that is appropriate. I believe that there is a provision that allows us to,
Jeannie, if you go back to the top, to the, there you go.
While you're doing that, can I use the restroom?
Take a couple minutes break. Good idea.
that is a wonderful idea.
Closed session.
Paper towels across the hall.
So, in sort of answer to this issue, I think the answer is in Government Code 54963, which states a person may not disclose confidential information that has been acquired by being present in a closed session authorized by various sections of the Government Code to a person not entitled to receive it unless the legislative body authorizes disclosure of that confidential information. So, to the extent that there is a good governance or, lawful purpose for disclosing the process by which the city council went about hiring the city manager, the city council can vote to authorize city council members to discuss the process by which that hiring decision was made.
Okay?
So you consider that as the entire, whatever happened in the closed session would then be open for discussion?
I mean, out of abundance of caution and not having been through the whole closed session process, I think the main public interest would be in the procedural aspects, but certainly it's up to the council to decide what it wants to disclose to the public and how.
So this is a procedural versus substantive issue like area. Welcome to the legal world. Let's be clear on what you guys want to disclose so we can figure it out.
So I assure you, this is a procedural presentation of the ad hoc committee. It was just the nuts and bolts of what.
Yeah, but it's your side of the presentation, so we can say if the procedure went different.
You have opportunity to rebut.
Absolutely. All right, sir.
So
Go for it.
I think we have to make a motion to proceed with allowing the ad hoc committee to present the city manager hiring process.
Okay, and I'll second.
Before we vote on that, I'd like to amend that motion and offer an amendment that the ad hoc committee may, if the ad hoc committee presents, then any council member may present in response to the ad hoc committee's presentation. So if you can either adopt that into yours, or we can amend yours with my amendment to yours. So I'd like to either amend the amendment or have you change.
So procedurally, we can do this one of two ways. Either Councilmember LaBouvet can move to accept our proposed friendly amendment to his motion. Alternatively, Councilmember Luthor can force a vote on his suggested amendment by getting a second, in which case we would vote on Councilmember Luthold's motion first, having a main motion on the floor and a motion to modify the main motion. That would be how it would work.
I think I accept. I think that, this is in the interest of transparency, and once this is out, it's in the public anyways, so, yeah, you certainly have the right to rebut or reply or comment in ever which way you'd like to. So can we vote?
Motion is basically to disclose what happened in the closed session with the ad hoc committee doing its disclosures and anybody else if they want to present their point of view also.
And I'm going to defer to, I guess, Councilmember Luthold and Councilmember LaBouvet to state for the record what the motion is that they would like voted on.
So the motion is for the ad hoc committee, who did substantial amount of work, to report on what the city manager hiring process was, how we aided in the facilitation of this. There is no content in here about one person's opinion versus another. That is off limits, so that's not in here.
And there will be opportunity if someone wants to respond regarding the issues raised by the ad hoc committee as we go forward.
Or other procedural issues.
Or procedural issues, exactly.
Sure.
Okay,
Go for it.
can we vote now?
You should be able to, yes.
I guess the motion or the vote as it appears on my screen is not that we are doing something on the ad hoc committee. As it appears on my screen, it's approval of the city manager report.
No,
And the answer is no.
no, it's recorded. As to allow the ad hoc committee to report on the city manager hiring process, and then with the amendment that other council members be able to also report on the process. I have all votes in. It passes 4-1.
Thanks, Jake. I think my report, this was No, it should probably be changed, because I think I got a little confused.
Okay.
See what that is.
Did you say that again, Andrea? You were kind of soft.
You said it's 4-1, and I'm not sure.
4-1, let me go back and look at the. So, Councilmember Elahi had voted no.
Yeah, no, change that to yes. I think there was a little confusion as to what we were voting on.
So I have, it's a 5-0 vote.
Okay, so I think we're back to slide 3. So, again, in the August 6th closed session, the council established and agreed to a city manager recruitment process. We discussed various the council previously,
Just for clarification, could you clarify what the vote was on that according to a recruitment process? Because my recollection is what I was insisting on was that the recruitment process be through a professional recruiter. So if you're saying the council agreed to it, please specify what that vote was. I don't know if it was 3-2 or 4-1, but in any case,
I don't think we recorded votes.
We did not.
There was a
all right.
majority.
So for the record, then I would record it now that I did not agree to a recruitment process that was being conducted by the ad hoc committee. I had insisted throughout this process that the professional recruiter be hired to do the recruitment and to do the screening.
Okay.
So whenever you say council agreed, that's not quite correct, because you're now, you know, when you say agreed, you say we didn't take a vote. So if you didn't take a vote, you can't say council agreed. Just say the ad hoc committee agreed, and there were some discussions on it.
Yeah, I know in hindsight, you're saying that now, but, you know, on that day, I don't recall you having such strong objections, you know, because we did modify a document altogether. We modified language in that meeting. So you participated and you were complicit in everything that happened. And so if you were objecting so strongly, you should have made that objection known in writing,
All right, I
but
mean,
you
I
did
could've-
not, right? Okay, so you're registering it now?
No, I've
but,
always
you know.
consistently objected at every meeting. Sergio has been present in a lot of meetings where I've said that.
Okay.
I
so
think other people have been present at a lot of meetings.
I-
You've just not heard it. I mean, that's a different
I
issue.
will acknowledge that you did not, you were present, but you mostly did not participate in any of the process in a constructive way.
Oh, okay, I mean, you didn't think what I participated was constructive and what you did was constructive, so now you're getting personal on this?
No, I'm
All right,
just,
so
I'm
I
just
think
saying
you
that-
didn't participate constructively either, so let's keep going.
Okay.
All right, so I'm sorry that you feel that way.
No, I don't feel like that way. I just don't appreciate you making it personal, you know, because otherwise we're going nowhere right here. And if you're going to use the words like council agreed, I want to put on the record that I did not agree to the process of you as an ad hoc committee moving forward
Okay, so,
with recruiting somebody as important as a city manager. I had insisted all along that we should hire a professional recruiter. I'd even given you names of a professional recruiter who lives in Monte Sereno and is the head of the, you know, the biggest employment firm, and that went nowhere.
so where it says council agreed, let's agree to replace that with a majority of the council agreed. So a majority of the council agreed to an overall recruitment process. A majority of the council agreed to establish an ad hoc committee for recruitment. A majority of the council agreed on the city manager job description. The draft was created by the ad hoc committee and finalized during the meeting. A majority of the council agreed on nationwide job posting sites. A majority of the council agreed on a coordinated public announcement. A majority of the council agreed on the development of a candidate database and evaluation matrix. These inputs to the process were also leveraged for the city attorney recruitment process in the ad hoc committee by Councilmember Luthold and Mayor Pro Tem Lawler. A majority of the council also agreed on conducting consistent interview process at the appropriate time. A majority of the council agreed to determine the city manager's compensation package at the appropriate time. Next slide, please. So the city manager job description, this was a public document and was circulated. The ad hoc committee, we researched previous and other city job descriptions, and we heavily leveraged a recent job description from Cupertino. And then we modified it for specific Monte Sereno requirements. And again, this document was modified by the entire ad hoc committee. I brought a computer in and we made the markups online prior to giving it to staff for distribution. So the detailed description of the ideal candidate. So some of the sections included in this document, we made a detailed description of leadership attributes and values, competencies and personal attributes, proven track record and ability to. We discussed opportunities and challenges specific to Monte Sereno, for example, continuous refinement and improvement of city operations, formulate options and policy direction consistent with the majority of the residents on new state legislation impacting the ability to regulate and develop locally, continue renewal of city infrastructure, improving pedestrian and bicycle safety, intensifying planning and awareness for wildfire and emergency preparedness, facilitate public discussion and possible enhancement of Site and Architecture Commission's role, address ongoing staffing needs, recruitment and retention, succession planning due to retirements and aging workforce, expand and build joint use agreements and/or public-private partnerships to improve quality of life in Monte Sereno. We specified a experience and education requirement of relevant municipal or public sector experience. So that or is important. We required a bachelor's degree with a master's degree preferred. And for the recruitment process, we also specified that it would be a confidential process, and therefore we would not disclose who the candidates were. And candidate submissions were allowed from August 6th through September 2nd, so a 4-week window.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Please? That this job description was given to our current city manager, city attorney at that time, Kirsten Powell, for her review and her approval.
Okay, next slide, please. The city manager job postings, we posted to 11 sites, and we conducted a nationwide city manager search. We posted to the Monte Sereno website, Nextdoor, LinkedIn.com, Indeed.com, Monster.com, govsjob.com, and then a variety of municipal online, ICMA, Public CEO, MMA&C, MMASC. I don't know what those acronyms are, but those are government publications, and Western City Online, which is also a municipal newspaper. It was a 4-week posting to all sites, so 8/6 through 9/2. The majority of the candidates that applied either applied through Indeed or sent their application directly to the city clerk. And the little bullet that I posted here was an example of a posting to our own city website. Next slide, please. The candidate database. So we actually developed a candidate database, or I developed a candidate database with the assistance of Mayor Turner. We received 69 applications. Applications were submitted to the city clerk and distributed to all council members. So every council member saw every resume and every application that came in. Significant effort to review and populate candidate submissions. Database attributes allowed filtering and comparison of candidates. So I actually came up with this segmentation for the database, and I did the majority of the population based on the resumes that I received. The filtering was actually quite useful in that we could then slice and dice various candidates and compare them against attributes such as public sector years of experience, previous city manager, assistant manager, private sector years of experience, and so forth. So in the comments segment, I highlighted key strengths and weaknesses were consistently captured in the comment section. So as I was going through a resume and as Mayor Turner was going through a resume, we would basically try to capture the same types of attributes from each resume and record them in the comments so that it would made for easier comparison. Candidates were initially ranked by the ad hoc committee in the initial screen section. So we would rank candidates as yes, yes, minus, minus, and then a no. And then those rankings were discussed, modified, and agreed by the majority of the council during closed sessions. A total of 69 applications were received, populated, and evaluated by all council members. Next slide, please. We also came up with a candidate evaluation matrix, and there was 4 phases to this matrix. Essentially, phase 0 was the applicant details. That was from the previous slide. And phase 1, the initial screen, that was also from the previous slide. And then in phase 2, we captured experience and skills from the job description, and phase 3, personal attributes, and then the overall evaluation. The initial intent of this part of the matrix was to actually maybe develop some sort of a numerical scoring system, but the way it was actually used was as basically a council member reference. So we essentially came up with these categories by which, when we conducted the interviews, we could think back to these this matrix, these matrix attributes, and try to mentally score the candidates as we went. Next slide, please. So the interview process. So again, we out of the 69 candidates, we narrowed it to 7 candidates. The process was each council member contributed to standard interview questions. Each council member asked standard and follow-on questions. The majority of the council agreed to interview 5 top candidates. 1 declined. Then in a separate session, the council agreed to interview 3 additional candidates. Each council member evaluates candidates based on the agreed matrix attributes. So to give you an idea of the types of questions that we asked the candidates, basically we developed a list of standard questions that, again, were contributed by each of the council persons. And let me just sort of read these into the record. I think it gives a good indication of the depth of the questioning that the candidates underwent. Given the unique nature of the city of Monte Sereno, why do you believe you would be a good fit as city manager? So this question got to the heart of qualities of a good city manager. A simplified quality management system can be defined as say what you're going to do what you say, report what you did. Do you think this is a good approach? Can you please elaborate on how you might apply this approach to improve transparency and overall quality of service? This was a management style question. Monte Sereno is a city that is built out. We have 1 elementary school, the First Baptist Church, and a city hall for commercial properties. We have hardly any vacant lots to build the state-mandated multifamily and affordable housing. As a city manager, how would you go about working this complex problem with the citizens, with the council, and with the state? How do we deal with these housing mandates from the state? This was a housing-related question. Next slide. So this is interview process, 7 candidates, and all candidates got these same questions. What skills do you bring regarding handling budgets and overseeing the financial operations of the city? This was a budget finance question. In your opinion, what are the most pressing issues our city faces, and how will you address these? This is the priorities of a city manager. You likely have experience with a team leader, team member relationship. In Monte Sereno, we have a council manager form of government, which means that the city manager has 5 elected team leaders that cannot explicitly collaborate due to Brown Act restrictions. Can you please elaborate on your management approach and how you will ensure alignment with the council and Monte Sereno residents at large, foster a collaborative team relationship with both the council and the city staff? And this is a team relationship question. 7th question was fiscal responsibility is a very important issue for Monte Sereno. Our source of revenue is from building permits, user fees, and property taxes. We are concerned about keeping our expenses under control. How might you go about stemming the growth rate? This is a fiscal responsibility question. And question number 8 was, how have you measured the effectiveness and performance of your organizations? And how have you evaluated the success of your own performance? This is evaluating performance question. Now, these interviews typically took about 45 minutes. The candidates were able to ask questions on their own. And city council members were not limited to just these questions at hand. We asked both the standard questions and follow-on questions. Next slide, please. So the compensation package, when we moved to this phase of the recruiting process, we had some objectives in mind. And it was really the ad hoc committee. And then we discussed this more broadly. So we wanted to reduce the salary to align with Monte Sereno management scope versus nearby larger cities. We wanted private sector style defined contribution benefits package. After a lot of investigation by Sergio, subsequently informed CalPERG's defined benefit package is required by law based on existing contracts, and so we weren't able to implement that sort of contract arrangement. We wanted to align with standard employee benefits package rather than having a custom contract explicitly for the city manager. And we wanted to offer a competitive package to attract qualified candidates. And so how did we do against this? Compared to the previous city manager, we reduced the salary by $21,400. We reduced time off by 5 days. We reduced accrued time off by 10 days. We aligned the overall package with standard employee benefits package. We increased severance for limited 36-month period to bridge benefit vesting transition. The current or the candidate under consideration has previously vested benefits with another city, and in order to essentially transition him to our city, he has to forego his previous contracts and vesting to move here. And so this 36-month period bridge was a compromise to allow him, it just wouldn't be fair for him to come, and if he left prematurely, he's basically out lifetime benefits. And so this was a compromise for us. So after 36 months, this reverts back to the previous city manager package. And we applied the existing city policy for other employees for off-hour employment. Now, as a result of a lot of the feedback, I think, and even Councilmember Elahi's objection, I think that the council should consider no off-hour employment to eliminate any perceived conflict. Next slide, please. So this is really the nuts and bolts of what Sergio said, just lays it out in a more explicit way. Again, the salary is $180K versus $201,400. Administrative leave was 10 days. All of the discussion around standard employee package, that's standard, and it's mandated by resolution. There's nothing that could be negotiated other than to sort of, it's the standard package. So, if one employee has it, they all have it. The severance is custom. Again, administrative leave is a city manager perk. So that is different from the standard city manager benefits package. And then the applicant did disclose a desire to pursue real estate activities during non-business hours. Again, existing city policy for other employees does not preclude off-hour employment. And so that was essentially our thinking. The current contract reflects real estate activities must not conflict with city manager responsibilities, excludes from listings in Monte Sereno. I think this one is, can be modified. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, to be successful, the city manager will need to closely align the management of Monte Sereno with the interests of the residents and the direction of the city council. City council is responsible for oversight and policy. In terms of oversight process improvements, the ad hoc committee has a draft city manager performance review process ready for review. There was no such review process in place for the previous city manager. The ad hoc committee has also prepared a draft of an annual and quarterly performance metrics and objectives process ready for review. Such a process is quite common in the private sector and was non-existent for our previous city manager. I also suggest that we contract part-time human resource services to develop formal HR processes in an employee handbook. Again, we don't have any of these formal processes in place, nor do we have any sort of professional HR services available to the city staff. Some possible policy discussions based on council member public feedback and comments is, if there is objection to off-hour employment, I think we should revisit that as a city policy issue and have a consistent city policy across all employees. Also, if there's, there was also quite a bit of discussion in the public social media boards about, this guy is getting paid so much and a big list of benefits. Well, all of those benefits are standard employee benefits packages or part of the standard employee benefits package. And if we want to modify it, then okay, let's have that discussion and modify it for everyone. We do have a contracted salary survey report that is expected to be available by the end of the year. We were going to have that discussion anyways. Next slide, please. So just a recap, and so we'll kind of address the front end of the process as well as the back end that other council members were getting into the nitty-gritties of. So again, there was 11 closed sessions over a 5-month period of time. So a fair amount of rigor went into this process. July 19th, city manager resignation. August 6th, overall recruitment process reviewed and finalized. City manager recruitment ad hoc committee established. Job description reviewed and finalized. Job site postings reviewed and finalized. And we coordinated the public announcement. On August 20th, 2 council members appointed to facilitate the selection process. The candidate database was reviewed and finalized. And then ongoing population and distribution happened as resumes rolled in. The evaluation matrix was reviewed and finalized. And a majority of the council members, all council members were directed to receive from the city clerk all of the applicant packages and all of the materials. On September 2nd, the job posting period ended, and so we finalized all of our applicants and received 69. Each council member had input into the initial screening and can suggest candidates of their own choice, including not on the list. And so, this part of the process was, hey, if there's somebody that you think is a good candidate and is not on the list of 69 candidates, any council member was free to add that person to the list at any time. Council agrees on top candidates to interview, or I'll rephrase, a majority of the council agrees on top candidates to interview. Each council member contributes to standard interview questions. September 7th, first round candidate interviews were held. Each council member asked standard and follow-on questions. Each council member evaluates candidates based on agreed matrix attributes. And during the session, additional candidates were suggested and scheduled for interviews. On September 17th, second round candidate interviews. Each council member asks standard questions and follow-on questions. Each council member evaluates candidates based on agreed matrix attributes. Top candidates were identified. And then basically Sergio was hired and came onto the scene. And the city attorney conducts reference checks and negotiates compensation packages.
Just to be clear, the reference checks were only of those referrals that the applicant gave and did not go beyond that.
As is customary with most application processes.
Yeah,
September 24th.
I just want to have the record clear. We can discuss that further.
September 24th, there was a discussion on candidate reference checks, feedback and discussion on selection. October 1st, there was a discussion on candidate reference checks. And there was also a request from council member for additional reference checks. And then there was also discussion on selection. So that we continued to October 9th, and discussion on candidate reference checks and compensation package, and discussion on selection.
Again, for the reference, the candidate refused to have any further candidate reference checks done, and no other reference checks were done.
I think that was further in the process, but correct me if I'm wrong. November 5th, discussion on candidate compensation package. November 19th, discussion on candidate compensation package. And here we are today, December 3rd, for the potential approval of city manager agreement in open session.
You also missed one step where a compensation package was, well, the council identified two potential candidates. A council package was sent to, agreement was sent to both of them at a far lower salary level, and they both agreed that that salary level would be acceptable. But that did not happen.
So I tried to capture that as part of the city attorney was actually conducting the negotiation.
Right, but it was more than that, because city attorney.
Customary for a negotiation to go back and forth.
I know, I wasn't going back and forth. The party had agreed to the salary package, and then it came back that they changed their mind, just to be clear.
Next slide, please. So conclusion. So the majority of the city council conducted an exhaustive and thorough recruitment process. 11 closed sessions were held over a 5-month period. 69 nationwide candidates were sourced and evaluated by all council members. 7 candidates were selected and interviewed by all council members. 2 candidates were selected by a majority of the council and underwent reference checks. 1 candidate gained a majority of the council approval. 1 candidate was offered a position of city manager, accepted the offer, and successfully passed a background check.
And just to be clear, it's not really a background check, it's just a criminal check. The background reference check was never done.
And then tonight, the city council will vote on Steve Leonardis for Monte Sereno city manager position. And that's it. That concludes the report of the ad hoc committee for hiring the city manager.
Okay, thank you. So are there any questions from council before I open it up to the public?
I guess I want to offer one additional clarification in response to the presentation there, and that was, well, two points. One, it was made clear to us by the city attorney that it is best and almost always the case that council reaches a consensus on the candidate that is chosen. We had discussions about that. The second candidate, at least 4 of us agreed could be acceptable, and the 5th person refused to make a stated way, comment one way or the other, preferring the first choice of the minority, of the majority. And then subsequently chose to go forward over the objections of 2 of the council members. In terms of these negotiations, making it clear that there is no consensus, which is the reason for the acrimony and the reason why we are concerned about the fact that this was pushed out to the public one day before it comes up for a vote. We've got a lot of public response, and people care about this. I think we're going to hear from the public, and then we'll come back and discuss this further. But the process went off the rails when a minority of the council chose to go against the idea of working until we found a consensus candidate, even if the consensus candidate was not the first choice of some people, but would be someone we could all agree on. And that's the process problem that we face here today, and why this is going to continue to be an issue. I think why the public is here to talk to us.
My comment?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate the work you guys have put in. You did a lot of work. Mayor Turner did a lot of work. The problem that we have is the experience is not there. You're not professional recruiters, and it's like if you paint the house next door and don't paint the house that needs to be painted, it doesn't matter how many hours you spent painting the house and you painted it the wrong color. The whole problem is you were not looking for a city manager. This almost seems like a process where you knew who the mayor of Los Gatos is, personally knew them, and you wanted them to be the city manager. That process almost is like ended up being, to some people, it has a bad smell. It has as if it was a railroaded process to appoint that person as the city manager. The reason it appears that a professional staff was not used, because that was done 2 years ago or 3 years ago when Terry was hired, and that professional, at that time, this applicant was not even screened to be presented to the city council. There's a letter from Everett Wilsheimer, who was on that city council, and he's basically stated in his letter, and it should be read, that this person just did not. And I'll see if I can find it, and I'd like to read that, because that shows why this process was broken down and really should not have moved forward with that process. And he was on the city council at that time, and so was the Mayor Turner.
So point of order. So what you said about me is not factual. So
Let me finish. Let me finish, then you can
you don't
please
know
answer.
my executive background, and furthermore,
Okay, let me finish, and then you can
I did
explain
not
that.
know any of the candidates whatsoever. So
And
it's-
I'm not saying you had any intention that this particular candidate be seen, but somebody did. And here's what Everett has to say. Dear City Council, and he was on the City Council. Hopefully you'll have a chance to read this before the meeting tonight. I was surprised to see the name of the proposed new city manager. As you may know, some of you do, Steve Leonardis was a candidate 3 years ago for that same position. Now, that was not disclosed to us until really we went through the process and we're about 2/3 of the way there, that he had applied for the same position 3 years ago. He was interviewed and was unanimously rejected by the council in 2017 for a lot of the same reasons that have been brought up this time. Being a real estate agent in the same area with close ties with other realtors and with developers and architects is a conflict of interest waiting to happen. I remember my 2017 interview with him very well. I didn't think he was qualified to be a city manager then, and not just because he's a real estate agent, and I still believe so today. I'm also worried about some of Lenardi's votes or lack thereof during key Los Gatos Town Council meetings. I've attached a clip from the Mercury after the vote on the North 40 project. Mayor Mariko Sayok, Vice Mayor Rob Rennie, and Councilwoman Marcia Jensen voted to approve the development. Councilwoman Barbara Spector voted no, and Councilman Steve Leonardos abstained from voting. Quotes, this is what he said. I am not voting. I do not exist, Leonardos said. Why would anyone abstain from voting on a major project like this, and what does I don't exist mean? Thanks for reading this. So the issue is 3 years ago, a professional screener would not have even put his name up. This time, you guys did a lot of work, but the parameters that were selected were basically, we want somebody living close by, and we want somebody we know. There were other very good candidates, and just because some of them lived a little bit further out, they were rejected. The other selling point that was added at one time was we were going to get him at a substantial discount from what we have been paying Terry. And it appeared that he had accepted that offer the first time, which was the November 5th meeting, the offer that went out. But then he came back and increased his severance pay requirement, increased his actual pay requirement. And the problem is, if he had the experience as a manager or a city manager or anything else like that, then we could talk about what is the appropriate benefit package. He does not have that experience, and he does not have and then he wants to continue with doing the real estate business. So so the other issue that really comes up is we're a transparent organization. For a $25 permit fee that was discussed, we went through 2 or 3 meetings, whether we should raise that $25 permit or not. This is the most important decision the city council is going to make. We do need active city resident participations. We've not given the city residents an opportunity to fully participate in. At the very least, what we can do is put this over to allow the city residents to fully participate, and from both sides. I don't think Mr. Leonardo has had an opportunity to people come in and, tell us about him more, so that we can say, yeah, this would be the great city manager. And I don't think the other residents who have looked at this and all the agreements and his experience as a city manager have had that chance. So I would suggest we push this over after we hear from our residents as to what their discussion on this subject is.
Okay, are there any other comments? No? Okay, in light of that, let me move on to, let me open this up to the public. So let me have our first speaker up here, please. Please limit your talk to 3 minutes, and may I remind everyone to respectfully challenge the idea and not the person. Thank you. First person is Jim Trembath.
Madam Mayor, members of council, I'm Jim Trembath. I live on Robin Ann Lane in Monte Sereno.
Good evening, Judge. How are you?
Evening. I appreciate that a great deal of work was done. I was not aware of that, and I commend that. I would have hoped that a professional recruiter would have been utilized, but that didn't happen in this instance. My concern about this candidate is not just the lack of experience, not having previously served as a city manager, assistant city manager, or anything of that nature, but I'm concerned about his profession as a real estate broker. I see this as a potential for unlimited conflicts and problems that could come up. I don't know if your proposed agreement has a provision requiring that there be a full disclosure of all outside work that Mr. Leonardis would engage in, so that there's some means of measuring or evaluating whether he is in compliance. I'm concerned that the city may not get the attention that it deserves if a real estate broker has a deal going. We all know that everything else drops, and the broker has to pay full attention to the transaction that's involved. The broker has a fiduciary duty to his client. So I'm concerned about that, and I would recommend that if this candidate is ultimately approved, that the severance package be subject to at least a 6 months probationary period, so as to make certain that this matter doesn't get embroiled in difficulty and perhaps litigation should those conflicts come to the attention of the City Council. A comment was made about the importance of having consensus. I can see, as we all can see, that there is some contention here. That's unfortunate. And it would seem to me that looking to another candidate that can get at least okay approval, maybe not excited approval, but okay approval, because you're going to be working with this person for a significant period of time. I think that suggestion makes good sense. I think it also makes good sense to allow the public, the voters in Monte Sereno, to be able to embrace all of the facts and understand what the situation is. I know that you had mentioned that's not appropriate to make personal comments, but I feel obligated to make one observation. I do not know this candidate personally. I do know of him, but it came to my attention earlier this year that he had painted a mural on his building in downtown Los Gatos, as I understand, without getting a permit, without complying with city requirements. And a citizen, a voter of Los Gatos, was upset and brought that opposition to her attention, or she brought it to her attention, to his attention, and to the city's attention. The response, and this is what bothered me the
Member,
most.
Can you please?
I'll wind up. This is the last comment. Thank you. I appreciate the time. That the candidate, Mr. Leonardis, sent a letter, believe it or not, under city letterhead of Los Gatos, threatening that person, threatening to sue that person, threatening to make the legal fees go up so much that she would lose her house. So I think, even though I know I was not to comment personally, I think that's an important character qualification that the council should be aware of if you're not aware of that now. So in any event, I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Maureen Wright.
She actually had to leave. She left a letter.
Do you want me to read it?
Sure.
I am sorry to not be able to stay to comment on tonight's proceedings. We have to pick up our family at the airport. Please note that Jeff and I strongly oppose the contract as something this evening. Thank you. Maureen and Jeff Wright. So the next one is Joan Silberstein.
I think what the judge said was really mostly what I was going to say. I think that, and I just found out about this tonight, which I think is pretty inappropriate for something that's so major. In our small town, where we have not a big budget, and we're willing to spend this kind of money, and on a realtor who wants to do double duty, I just think it's wrong. So obviously, I think you should vote against this, and at the very least, table it, so we can all have a say in it. He does, apparently he has not appropriate qualifications for this position. The conflict of interest is significant. I think you're opening yourselves up, as the judge said, to lawsuits. You want that? I don't think so. I don't want it as a citizen. Again, the stipulation that he would, again, work as a realtor, not good. Severance of a year. Do you know what physicians get when they get out of this stuff? They don't. This is like excessive. Everything about this does not pass the smell test, all of it. The way that you guys can't agree, that's not good. You're should be a unified body, but you're clearly not. And in something like this, you need to find a way to do that, which means you may need to look at other candidates. And so what? There's no big hurry. This is not something you need to rush through, and nor should you. Let's see what else. If he has contacts, and that's how he got this position, that again is a no-no. Again, none of it passes the smell test. I'm very angry about it. And you should really let other citizens know what is going on in here. That's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Suzanne Jackson.
Members of the council, my name is Suzanne Jackson. I live on Grandview Avenue. First of all, I want to thank you for all your work you did prior to this meeting to come up to your conclusions. You've done an extensive job doing what you needed to do, but there is some dissent, and I'd like to address a couple of points that I actually had in my correspondence to you. The first of all is that this person has no experience as a city manager, and I think that that is one of the prime reasons that I am concerned, because he only knows it from one side but not from the other side. A formal professional search committee was not utilized by this body. You did a great job as an insight as an ad hoc committee, but I think Member Elahi Javed had the right idea. There are professional organizations that actually work this, and 69 candidates. I think that's a good thing that you had that many to look at. Secondly, the city manager position is a full-time job. Yes, we are small, but this is a full-time job. There would be a conflict of interest of the time he spends on any other duties other than being the city manager. How can the city justify the $188,000 yearly salary not being a full-time city manager? The severance package of a full year's salary appears to be excessive, and we've addressed that before. This process needs time and professional assistance, and it needs to be fully transparent. I want to thank you for all the work you've done. I thank you for any future work you did, and I think that this should be tabled until we can get some more information about the candidate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, anybody else? Chris Wiley.
I didn't think this would be this tough. I'm sure it was tougher for you guys. I've known Steve for a long time. He's not, I'd say, a personal friend. I had been overseas for a couple of years. I came back to town. I met Steve when he was working for another fella who was on our town council who was trying to get a skateboard park. And he was out there. He didn't even have a boy who was riding a skateboard or a girl who was riding a skateboard. He wanted to be active, and he thought working with the youth was a good thing. And I said to him, "You gotta be kidding me. A skateboard park at this point in our town with all the conflict and this and that, when we should be helping our students maybe get computers, do the youth center, this." I said, "You know, to be honest, if you really feel about this like you do, you should run for office." And guess what? He did drop the skateboard park because he figured out financially it wasn't going to work, the liability wasn't going to work. So he put his mouth where his beliefs were, and he ran for town council. I again was out of the nation. I work overseas. I work in a place where there's no communications. So I see he got elected, and one of the first things when I did see him, which was about a month later, was he was explaining to me, the first thing he dove into was how is the town run fiscally? And he found out some very serious flaws in the system, that we pay more money for retired people on our payroll. Let's say it's 100% right here. 60% at the time he was in office, and now it's almost up to 65, I think. Our retired people, what are we going to do about that? That we're paying for people who aren't even on the payroll, that we don't use their services or anything else. The fact that some guy just walks into town and you say to him, put yourself into this position and make it better, he went and started diving into different organizations and different aspects. So when I saw this next door wine, which I'm shocked to find out that you didn't say that you were a councilman on this committee. You made it sound like you were just a regular citizen with concern, that you should have put also that you were a councilman and that you wanted to know from the citizens what's going on. It led into all this chain of throwing this and throwing that, and you're forgetting that you chose a guy on what you decided what to do, and you went forth, and now you're not happy with it. You're like the kid with the Christmas present who wanted this Christmas present that was advertised on TV. You wanted it. You begged mom and dad to buy it. Then you got it. You opened it and go, shoot, it needs batteries. Okay, now we get batteries. But it didn't work the way you wanted it. It wasn't at all what was advertised. You put the advertisement out there, you got the package, and now you're not happy with it. And that's not fair to the man who took the time, or any candidates that took the time to do an interview. I'm sorry to get emotional about this, but I don't know how you're going to fix it, but you do have a person there. And all the accusations that he's not experienced, that man spends a lot of time at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning looking at issues. When it came to Highway 17, he was the first one to say, why can't we widen it? The land's there. And they said, you know, you could. Nobody ever asked us before. So I'm just saying that don't throw him away. But you made a decision, and it's something that I think it's workable to work with. And I realize the citizens, let's face it, no town asked the citizens for their input on hiring. We didn't for Los Gatos. You think the mayor of San Jose got out there when he decides the town manager and says, what do you guys think? Now, it's nice you came up. I totally agree with it. But I'm not here, I'm just saying that you're throwing something away, you're throwing the work you put away, and you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And just saying, from my experience, I'm not a pal of the guy, but I have been there from the start.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Ed Turner.
Ed Turner, 15232 Stratford Court, Monte Sereno. I'm going to take an opposite view as well, as usual. I think that Steve's 10 years experience in the Los Gatos government will be invaluable to us. He knows everybody in this area. He's well known in this area. And when I talk to people, I find that he's very well respected. This city has some serious problems. I looked at our finances 3 years ago, and I concluded then that we were pretty well managed from a financial standpoint. It looked pretty good to me. I looked at them again this year, and I don't believe that anymore. We've watched our personnel expense expand by 40% in the last 2 years. That is unsustainable. That needs to be reined in. I think Steve can do that. I don't think we can do that under the current administration. And this isn't something we haven't talked about a lot yet, but in the not too distant future, the new housing element is going to come down on us like a ton of bricks. And we're going to have some really serious problems. And there is a vehicle now for us to try to do some horse trading with other cities. And I know that's going to be a difficult process. But if anybody could make that happen, it would be Steve. And there is nobody on this city or on this staff who could do that. And I have to say, I'm going to try to honor the admonition not to attack the person, but to challenge the idea. I really think that the fear-mongering that was done on Nextdoor was just way out of proportion. I think of it as deception by omission. You could have told the whole story and not had people so upset. And there are some legitimate concerns here, and I think the council can address those concerns. And I hope you will. But I think Steve's an excellent choice, and I would certainly support him. Thank you.
Steve Jackson.
Thank you, and I'll be brief. First, I want to thank you for the extensive and comprehensive work that you did in identifying appropriate city manager. Putting on my ethicist hat, my major concern is that there is a substantial conflict of interest here. Two conflicts of interest. One would be of time. This is a full-time job, and this is what the next city manager should be doing full-time and not have any other distractions, even if they're supposedly in off hours or on vacation or whatever they may be. So that's one conflict of interest. And the other conflict of interest, obviously, is the fact that, and there's no, I'm not trying to denigrate the profession, but he is a broker, real estate agent, and that poses a significant conflict of interest when it comes to many of the issues that the council will face and which a city manager is going to have to interface with. So thank you very much for the opportunity to make a few comments, And once again, I thank you all for the hard work you put into it.
Thank you so much. Doug Crafts?
Thank you very much for letting me come and talk to the council. I actually don't live in Monte Sereno. I live very close by. I'm part of Los Gatos. And I'm actually thrilled that Steve is leaving Los Gatos. I just wish Monte Sereno was further away, given what he's done to Los Gatos. I moved to Los Gatos for serenity and beauty, and I was appalled by this monstrosity of a war glorification mess that he turned our beautiful, bucolic, peaceful town center into. I used to enjoy overlooking the town center from the museum. I'm a member of the museum, and it was one of the most beautiful, quiet places you could find in Silicon Valley. And that's been turned into this sort of a adolescent war, wet dream menagerie, and it has really shaken me. Every time I drive by it, it makes me think about putting the house up for sale and finding another community to move to. And I want to warn you, or forewarn you, I think is a better term, that he's going to be at it here. And I'm just hoping that there isn't going to be another eyesore put up in front of me that I have to turn my eyes away from every time I come and go. Sorry about that. So I just want some of the things that have been said about him, sorry about that, may or may not be true, but I can say he doesn't have the kind of judgment that I would like to see in a mayor. And I don't think that his interests are in line with the kind of neighbors that I know of that come to these small towns to live in a small town sort of a lifestyle. So get ready for the big time, because he's going to be all prepared to sell whatever he can sell here, because that's what he does.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any more blue cards? Mr. Brian Mikachak.
Thank you. I'll start off by saying, first of all, I support Steve to be the city manager, but I think that the two major issues that have been raised with respect to his contract working, continuing his business as a broker, real estate and financial broker, that one and the severance, those are both negotiable, I think. And if they're not negotiable, then I don't think it's a good deal. But if you could negotiate those with Steve, and I think you can, then I think he's a great candidate for a number of reasons. First of all, he's local, he knows the community, and with respect to some issues that have been raised regarding his independence and conflict of interest, I am now on the Site and Architectural Commission, and I got my training today. And I think he would be certainly know where the boundaries are. And Steve is experienced with the town of Los Gatos, so I think he's going to be okay with that. I'm not worried about that. I did some reference checks on him myself, because I think someone's integrity is the most important thing. And I spoke with two people in Los Gatos that I respect and have been there for years, and they know the community. I asked them point blank that, what about Steve's integrity? Both said that he's a fine individual. So that's a deal breaker for me. So that made me feel infinitely better. I think that his interests are aligned with Monte Sereno. He's not going to do anything bad here, I don't think. I don't think he's going to take advantage of anything. His experience, while he hasn't been the city manager, he's been on council for 9 years. He's been through 2 city managers there, town managers. And he's worked on their evaluations, and he knows who the city manager reports to. The city manager reports to you, city council. So I guess in summary, if you can resolve those 2 issues on the severance, and I'd say, 12 months, I think, is too much. 6 months may be okay. You meet at 8, whatever. I would be good with that. By the way, I don't think that you would have to invoke that clause, but anyways. The other thing is having a job. If you're going to ask him to take this position, he's giving up his council position in Los Gatos. So I think that his second job should be, he should dial back on that, and it should be limited in some manner. Those are my comments.
Thank you so much. So are there any other speakers out there? No? Okay, so let me close the public comments portion, and we will now go to city council comments.
I can start. So again, I just want to clarify that I didn't know any of the candidates prior to the process. I thought, you know, in my experience from private sector, we conducted a more thorough process than I've seen conducted by any professional HR organization for the tens of director level positions that I've hired at, you know, billion-dollar companies. I think we ran a clean process. We had 69 candidates. You know, we vetted every candidate. You know, Steve Lenardis was not preordained, at least by me. I didn't even know the man until this process. I think it's not fair to bring a lot of unfact-checked innuendo into a hiring process. You know, I think you have to take the man at face value. And generally, the process limits you in terms of how you should be making your decisions. You should be, you know, referring very explicitly to the job rec and to the stated goals. And to, you know, and in that regard, you know, we interviewed 7 candidates, and a majority of the council agreed on Steve. I was drawn to his successful service history working in the town of Los Gatos as mayor and council member for the past 10 years. I admire his desire to accept a new challenge. You know, he's been at that position for 10 years and wants to try something different. This is more administrative type position. I think that the experience that he's gained working in Los Gatos can really benefit Monte Sereno, especially given the local nature of the issues that we're facing. Steve knows the community and will work effectively with the city council in the interests of our community. I recently tried to also do some of my own fact-checking. I attended a State of the City meeting hosted by Stephen, and I sat in the back of the room. I didn't, you know, I don't know him other than the materials that were presented during the interview process, and I was impressed with his in-depth knowledge and ability to openly speak on a vast array of issues. He didn't even work from notes. He really knew in-depth every city issue, and interacted with the residents during that meeting in a way that respected their inputs. It was a tough meeting because, you know, in these types of meetings, you're challenged. And I thought that he handled it very well and, you know, was able to satisfy in terms of his comments. And, you know, I believe Stephen's motivations are sincere and aligned with the interests of the residents of Monte Sereno. He doesn't need this job. But he offered his candidacy despite personal and political obstacles. And believe me, these are pretty severe personal and political obstacles. So it became known to us through the negotiation of his contract that he's giving up lifetime retirement and family medical benefits from Los Gatos to become Monte Sereno city manager. That is indeed why we said, okay, it's not fair for you to give up, you know, perhaps millions of dollars worth of benefits on a whim. You know, so there should be some bridge in your contract, but it's a limited bridge. It's a 36-month bridge. And so that is the reason why we took the severance from the standard, from the previous city manager of 6 months to a 1 year, but it's literally to offset that one, you know, so that one financial obstacle that he's giving up. I think he'll be a thoughtful and effective city manager, and I'm looking forward to him getting to work on the important issues of Monte Sereno. I'm very tired of not getting things done on the city. And so I'm looking forward to a city manager that really wants to work hard and do the job. You know, again, going back to the process, you know, I think it's the role of the council is to manage the manager. So if the city manager is not performing, it's our job. You know, that's the way it works in private sector, that the manager needs to manage the manager. And so you do that by setting up good business process. And I think that after we can identify and agree on a city manager, I know that I will work very hard to put that business process in place, make sure that we have very rigorous evaluation standards, that he very clearly knows what his duties are and what is expected of him in terms of performance goals. And then I also want him to come back and, on a quarterly basis, report out. I mean, that's what's expected in the private sector. You do operations reporting on a quarterly basis, and you know, in advance, you set up what your metrics are that you're going to achieve, and then after the period, you report on your results achieved. That's just the standard way of doing business. So it's not that Steve is going to be given free rein. It's our job to manage the manager. That's my input. Thank you.
Okay, so I've been on this side. I'll go ahead and take you guys on this side.
I've spoken, you had.
So, so I'll go ahead and speak. I've touched on some of these issues. The next door post, I want to address that issue. This agenda item was allegedly posted at City Hall last Wednesday, because it's our requirement that these things be posted on the Wednesday before. However, due to city website problems, the city did not send out the e-blast to every citizen who has requested to receive this information. That did not go out till 11:13 on Monday morning. And so this is a question not about whether technically the law has been followed here. It's whether the spirit of transparency and keeping the citizens informed and allowing appropriate citizen input has been met. I was, Councilmember Elahi put up a post on Monday afternoon, I believe. I was able to put up a post on Nextdoor Monday evening to get the citizens information, because this council deserves to hear from all sides here about the issue of adopting the contract, which is an agenda item. I would like to also point out, not only did it not go out to the citizens, it was not posted on the telephone pole in my neighborhood where these are always posted. The September 4th meeting is posted, but this meeting wasn't posted. Now, is it legally required to be posted? No, but I walk my dog and every other city posting is up there. This one was not. So I'm concerned about the fact that this has not come up in a timely manner. I thank everyone for coming here and staying till nearly 10 o'clock, and this continues, to give your input on one day's notice, because no one here had more than one day unless they were an insider like the husband of the mayor who spoke, who didn't describe himself as the husband of the mayor. I put myself up immediately when it was brought to my attention that I am a city council member, modified the post to state that, but the disclaimer makes it pretty clear, plus I think the citizens generally know me to be a city council member. This went to a wider neighborhood, and that perhaps should be more clear. To the issue of this candidate, my concerns, as I expressed, we had a nearly consensus candidate in the number 2 position, yet the minority on council, the majority chose to put 2 people into the minority and proceed with someone who very clearly at that point was not a consensus candidate at that point. I expressed that I would potentially come around to this candidate, but I need more information. I need that information from you there in the audience, and I appreciate all of the inputs that we've received on very short notice. I think we would get much more with better notice. I expressed that I needed more information before I could come around to this candidate. I requested more information. We set that up, and the response from the candidate shut us down and said, you will not look into me any further, and under threat of litigation. So that was a great concern to me, and yet the council went forward with this. I want to bring up, we heard from the public that, and the reason I brought up those concerns was because I am very aware of what has happened in this community over the years, as well as personality issues that I had concerns and wanted more information and perhaps could come around. What was brought up by the public today was that Mr. Leonardis, using his city email address, threatened a citizen in Los Gatos. I'm going to read the email. Dear Ms. Redacted, it is my intention to sue those of you who willingly remove my property rights I'm entitled to. In other words, you have a right to comment. You have no right to affect the value of my building by attempting to move my rights to paint my private property. This property is currently valued at $2 million. If you wish to purchase it, then you can paint it as you wish. Personally, I think you are a pretentious snob for writing this. You are embarrassing and offensive, in quotes. As my family participated in painting this building, and the intention wasn't to paint the Mona Lisa for your viewing pleasure. So mind your business, keep your opinions to yourself, and if you don't want to spend all your home equity defending yourself in a lawsuit. So that is the personality of the person when challenged. I asked for more information. I said, maybe this is a fluke. Maybe this is one-off. If we get more information, if we find out that there is a reason for this, or he's changed, or he understands that Monte Sereno citizens will not accept ever being treated this way and should never, no citizen should ever have to be treated this way under a government email. So that is one example. There are other examples I was concerned about. I am not completely opposed to this candidate. Could I live with this candidate if he was selected by the minority on the council? I would do my very best to. I was hoping Steve would be here tonight because I have the same challenge that was brought up, because I want to ask before we approve a contract. Steve, would you show your sincerity to the city of Monte Sereno, that you care about the city of Monte Sereno as a city manager who's paid in a full-time position should care? If you put yourself out of your take care of myself mode for a moment, look at it from our city's point of view. You're being paid for your full-time attention. Would you give up your outside work or agree to a limitation that is extremely strict? It's not, do you have any conflicts? And as was mentioned here, we need to police those conflicts with absolute disclosure at all times, because we care who he has lunch with. If that person is a developer who might ever do business in our community, we need to know that that happened. So would he agree to give up completely? Or can we set the limits, not just so it is the conflict, but the appearance of conflict? I don't know if we can do that, but I want to ask him, would you do it? Because that language, it's the conflict or the appearance of conflict that needs to be in there. And we need an absolute bar. Secondly, severance. Severance is a critical issue here. First of all, this is a bait and switch, and that is why I am so frustrated. We gave our negotiator a request to find out whether our two candidates would accept a specific salary package. They came back and said yes, and we continued the negotiations. Subsequently, Mr. Leonardis came back at the 11th hour of the negotiations and demanded a significant increase over what he had previously indicated was an acceptable salary. And he added the term when he understood that this was not a council that was reaching a consensus. He added the severance term. You didn't offer that to him to cover his health insurance. He demanded the severance term when he was aware that this council was not in agreement and that he might or might not succeed at this job. My challenge to Steve was, were he sitting here tonight, is, Steve, would you show your sincerity? Mr. Labouvet believes you can do your job. There may be 3 people on this council who believe you can do your job. I'd like you to do your job. Show your sincerity that you can do your job. 6 months severance. That's the magic number that is reasonably standard in this state. I looked at a lot of surveys of what other city managers get. They get between 0. Many city manager contracts in this state have no severance whatsoever. Some have 3 months. The bulk center around 6 months. I saw a couple at 9 months. And there are outliers at 1 year. And those are outliers. So the challenge to Mr. Leonardis, were he here, or were we going back to negotiate with him, as I believe we should, is would you just prove that you can do this job by agreeing to 6 months? Because if you can't do the job, you should leave, not shake down the city for $200,000 to get you to go away when you're not doing your job. Because we can't fire the guy. He's going to sue us. We've got to pay his severance, and he's probably still going to sue us if we're not getting along. So we need someone who can get along, who's dedicated to this job, and who will work for our city. 1 day's notice to the public is not appropriate. We need to investigate this further. We need to negotiate this further. Let's put this off. One of our authors who wrote in and expressed this to the city had a great suggestion. Don't rush it. Our committee was rushed when the compensation and the severance were changed at the 11th hour. And we don't need to rush it. We can put in an interim city manager. The suggestion was made in the email. The city clerk could easily cover that position if she was willing to do it for any amount of time necessary, or we could find someone else to do it. We don't need much management in this city in the short term. We're going into the quiet month here. We need to make sure we negotiate this properly and get an agreement that we're proud to show our citizens and that they know is coming down the pike. So those are my comments on this. The next door post I put into the written record here with the comments. I think they are all important input that we should be considering, and we heard most of the same things here tonight. So I appreciate that. My vote, and I will be making a motion on this after we hear from everybody, my vote is that we delay this, go back to the negotiations, fix the term, at minimum, fix the term about the conflicts and the outside employment that we've heard about here, and challenge on the term of the severance. Because if this person believes they can do the job, and you believe they can do the job, they don't fear going away, and they're not going to shake us down if they don't work out. So I will make that motion after everyone speaks.
Okay, are you done?
Yes.
Thank you. So, Councilmember Elahi, please go ahead.
I think, Rina, you've had a really tough year. And, I mean, the year didn't start off well. It started with firing the existing mayor and forcing him to resign. So you had a really tough year. I understand all the hard work you've put into this thing. And the year didn't get any better. The city attorney then resigned, so we had to hire a new attorney who's doing a good job, but unfortunately doesn't have the historical background of the city and doesn't understand this great city with its complicated problems. But, so thank you for taking it over. And then you had a tough job. The city manager resigned. Now, apparently they all gave reasons that they're resigning for family law, reasons. But they resigned because the city council did not treat them properly. We did not give them the respect. And that's something that the mayor needs to lead on, and unfortunately that did not happen. And you had a tough year because now the city staff wants to have a union because they're not satisfied with what the city council is doing and what may come down. And that union is going to be formed because the city council has no say-so about it. As long as the majority wants a union, they get the union. So you really had a tough year. So I'm really asking you not to make another decision that's going to cause problems for the city over the next few years. I know it may be too much to ask, but they say a man's grasp is to reach beyond his grasp. Otherwise, what are heavens for? So I'm going to ask you to table this thing, if not to reject it, and move on. And don't leave something for if the pro tem becomes the mayor, for her to have to tackle this. I appreciate and understand the viewpoint that since he may be giving up some pension benefits, that we should cover for it, but we're not a welfare city. You know, we can't afford to be giving out $400,000 for that. There are a ton of better candidates. I mean, the 7, 8 candidates that you looked at, some of them are far better candidates. They have city management experience or some experience in the management. You have somebody who has no experience. You like him because your husband has known him for 10 years, you've known him, and that's the reference check, you know, that you know them personally. And that doesn't sound good, you know, because it does not, and there's no professional screening. Nobody has checked his references. The reference checks were done, were only the 4 or 5 references that he gave, and their responses are also not some that, you know, you could go and say, hey, this guy is just one of the best things that ever happened. I mean, those reference checks, one of the reference checks came back with saying, yeah, he's not crazy. You know, I mean, those are the kind of responses we're getting on his references that he gave us. So I'm really concerned, and I really don't understand it. I mean, is this a process that was a railroaded process? I mean, were you supporting Steve from becoming a city manager 2 years ago when it was rejected unanimously by that city council? Did you encourage him to run at this time or not? It smells bad, and I'm sure you are well motivated, but the decisions that have been made over the last year have caused a lot of anxiety in the city council, and we've spent a lot of time trying to fix those decisions. There's countless hours that were spent, there was no reason to put the city within 1 year in a position where we have to hire a city attorney, where we have to hire a new city manager. We have now, you know, deal with this a staff that's going to be unionized. So I really want to extend my grasp, reach for the heavens, and ask you to table this thing so we can hear from more people. And, you know, I would love to see a room full of Steve fans coming in and saying, hey, this is the best thing that happened. And don't let this guy go. Or I'd like to hear from others who can give us a reference check. We haven't had a reference check. That's the only way we can get some reference back. So I'm really going to ask you to table it, and I'll make the same request to Mayor Pro Tem, that this is not a decision you make with giving only 1-day notice to your citizen. And even on that 1-day notice, we've had a lot of people that have come in and expressed their point of view. So you know how strongly our citizens feel. I think we owe it to the citizens, you know, when we can do an extension just for a $25 permit, we certainly can do it for the most expensive decision we're going to make. It's a $400,000 decision. Thank you.
Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Lower.
Thank you. In all of this process, it was a long, arduous process, and I want to thank the ad hoc committee for all of the work that they did. We did get 69 applications. There was a very complicated matrix that we were able to break everything down, and we got to 7 candidates on that. What set Steve apart from the others for me was a lot of what Daniel had said. He's a longtime resident. He's raised his family here. He understands the unique qualities of Monte Sereno and our challenges that we face. Because of the 9 years that he's served on the city council, or on the town council in Los Gatos, he has a real understanding of the pressing issues that face both of our cities and the challenges we face with resources. He also understands what a council needs and expects from its city manager, bringing a much-needed perspective to the job. I believe he will be better able to serve this council because of this. He has served on many boards and commissions during his service in the community and has developed many relationships during his years as an elected official. These relationships can be beneficial in serving the needs of Monte Sereno, particularly when we're dealing with the new housing allocation coming soon. I have witnessed firsthand how Steve Leonardis engages with the community. Last spring, I stood in for Mayor Turner to present awards with Mayor Steve at the time to seniors at the Terraces of Los Gatos, and I was really impressed with how gracious he was with the residents of the community, and it struck me that he really truly cares about our community. And so those things kind of encapsulated, and then the interview, certainly the things that he brought forth, I really felt like he could really be a very good asset for our city. So that said, his contract, in terms of negotiations, I think negotiations are normal. I understand the question about real estate, and we did put that in there. We could be restrictive on that, but you know, I suggest we just move forward and get a city manager in here.
Thank you. Okay, so I heard many complaints about Steve's building. So I actually talked to one of his references, who was a Los Gatos who is a Los Gatos council member, and I said, what is the problem with the building? She says, if Los Gatos residents can forgive him for that building because he painted the American flag on that building, then the Monte Sereno residents should be able to overlook that building. She also said that Steve Lenardi's, that building, he has actually asked the Veterans Memorial to stay in that building for a whole year for free. So he doesn't charge them rent. So here are some of the things that a very sincere individual that I see, that I've seen at council meetings, committee meetings for the last 2 years. Now, he wasn't a friend. He's not a friend. I see him at committee meetings. I also see him at fire department meetings. We spent the whole day with the fire department. Okay? I think he is well known and he is highly regarded with other local governments. And he's well liked by his constituents. If you look at next door, you will see a lot of the constituents actually complimenting Steve. A major issue that we will be facing in Monte Sereno is that if we continue in this path, that we will not be able to sustain our expenses after 8 years. Okay? Our employee expenses went from 1 million last year to 1.4 million this year. So we need somebody there who is fiscally conservative. And when I look at Steve, I know he is fiscally conservative. I've talked to other people. I've talked to the supervisor in District 1, and he says, if you go for Steve, you're going to get a fiscally conservative person, because that's what he is. And that's what we need, because if you look at Monte Sereno, we don't have a lot of revenue, right? We have no businesses. We have one church, right? City Hall, and the school. So we have to be fiscally conservative. An 8% raise that we gave 2 years ago and a 5% raise is not sustainable. We cannot do that. Okay? So let me go back to Steve. I think we need a city manager who will embrace the goals and objectives of the council. We want the city manager, when we say we want you to put this on the agenda, that he will put it on the agenda because it's important to the city council. And that's what we're looking for. Not very complicated stuff, but very, very succinct. He'll be able to take succinct instructions from us because he's been a council member before. We have a city council, we have a city manager that we took last year that did not have city manager experience, and yet he was here for 2 years. So it is possible to have a city manager who was not a city manager before. When you talk about the second candidate does not have any government experience, does not have any city council experience, right? Was never a mayor. He had private experience in private sector. So if I were to choose between Steve and that person, I would certainly choose somebody who I can sit with and say, agendize this, and he'll say, yes, I will do it. Because we have serious problems in Monte Sereno that we need to start addressing. So I like Steve because I believe he's fiscally responsible. Okay? And I want to make sure that our limited resources are well managed. That's number one for me. I think he will manage our resources. Because if we're not viable as a city, we can't function as a city. Steve has been a 30-year resident of Los Gatos. He knows and he understands this community well. He knows the history of the Hacienda Inn more so than I do, and I've been living here for 35 years. He can sit down with you and say, if I were to do some of these things that you have problems with, he says, I would do this, this, and this. And I look at him and I say, yes, those are the things that we actually want from our council. Because we've been struggling the last couple of years, even getting things on the agenda. Right? So, I know that Steve has been a Los Gatos mayor for 2 years and a city council member for 8 years, so 10 years. And when I talk to him about how do you agendize things so you can get things done, he says it's very easy, right? And he'll outline for me what it is that we need. We have employment. We're supposed to have employment agreements that we don't have in Monte Sereno. So we need to be able to put these things together because we're growing up and we're spending so much money. And when we spend so much money, you have to have processes in place to keep track of our finances. We still do finances by hand, paper and pencil. Come on. So these are the types of things that I want you guys to understand. We have problems. It's not about, ideology. He's not into ideology. He's very practical. And so that's why I will vote for Steve. Thank you. So
I would like to make a motion that we push this out at least till the next meeting so that our negotiator can negotiate regarding a appropriate clause on, with the input that we've heard here today, that we need a far more clear and restrictive clause. So we need additional negotiation time on the outside employments and conflicts issue and appearance of conflicts. So we need that additional time, so I'm asking that we do that, as well as negotiating further on the issue of severance. So I would like to make a motion that we table this until, for further negotiation and bring it back to the council at the next meeting for potential approval of a modified contract. That'll give us time to fix the contract properly instead of in a rush tonight. And if there is additional input from the community as we do that, that will give people time to take a look at this and bring things to our attention if we've missed something, because quite frankly, just over 24 hours is not enough time for us to allow our citizens to take a look at that contract that we are statutorily required to give them a look at before we vote on it. So I'd like to make that motion if I have a second, or unless there's other discussion before I do.
Okay, can I suggest that we take that in pieces? So why don't we deal with the conflict of interest piece first? And since, basically the motion, or the action that's before us is to approve this contract. And so can we make some line edits to the contract first and then,
you could make
consider the delay?
You could make an alternate motion to approve the contract with modifications. Yeah, certainly that's within the council's power. Up to you guys to decide what you want to approve. The terms of employment are entirely within the council's purview.
I think, there is very strong feedback that there is a clear conflict of interest, perceived or not, with, the real estate activities. And so I would make a motion that we remove the ability to have off-time work and in this specific contract. And furthermore, there was a clause that was a leftover from the previous contract that talked about aggregate base pay, and I would propose to change that language to 12 months base pay. Based on one of the public postings, there was some misunderstanding about how severance might aggregate, end times over a 36-month period. That's not the way it works. It's 180K for 36 months, period. And after 36 months, it's half of that. And so I know Councilmember Luthold threw out a number of 200K. It's not 200K, let's be factual, it's 180. Councilmember Elahi threw out a number of 400K. I don't know where that number came
Well,
from
it's
either.
200 plus 200. In the first year, you pay him 200, and then you give him a severance of 200.
That's not,
That's where it comes in.
okay, well, that's just not the
Well,
way,
if you add up all
that's
his-
not the way severance works.
Well, if you add his salaries and his,
All right,
or it might be 188 for the first year and not 200 completely, but
so yeah, that math
if you,
doesn't work.
if you add all the benefits and everything else, it's over 200,000.
Benefits are not included in severance,
I know,
period.
but they're included in the salary that you're paying him the first year.
As are with every employee. And so let's just be factual about what's happening here. There's a severance clause in this contract. You're a lawyer, you should understand contracts. A severance contract means that if there's an involuntary resignation, he is owed 180K, period.
Yeah.
For 36 months, and then thereafter, it's a 6-month salary. So my motion is therefore, let's remove the ability to act as a real estate agent, period.
So that would basically be to strike the ability to
have
any,
any previous job, which is,
or any outside, so,
which is which is basically the way the previous city manager's contract read. So revert back to that language, and then please modify the aggregate word into something that is more understandable.
so as I understand it, your motion would be to approve the contract tonight, subject to those modifications of striking from the agreement language that the manager shall be entitled to continue to as a licensed real estate broker agent so long as it does not interfere or conflict with the functions and duties of manager, and the subsequent sentence, and then make a modification to the severance provision. Change the language regarding, let me just pull it up really quickly. Shall be equal to, instead of manager's aggregate base pay, shall be equal to the monthly base pay at the amount in effect.
Or either annual or 12-month, right? That's basically what aggregate means in that context.
Okay.
So do we take these motions in order, or how? It's 'cause
We
now
don't
there's
have a second on either motion at this point.
Yeah, so the other concern is the severance pay of 12 months is too long. So do you want to amend that to 6 months or 8 months, as somebody suggested?
Right, so, I mean, I guess we need to take this piecemeal, and I think that's appropriate to talk piecemeal. So I think first, let's, if I have a second, talk about tabling this while we engage in further negotiation versus rewriting it on the fly in a meeting as a final legal document that you're going to approve tonight. So I don't think we should do that. If we need to call a additional meeting, a special meeting, to approve a contract once we finish writing it with lawyer review so no errors get introduced, then we do that. But so my motion is to table this while we, at minimum, do a rewrite of these terms so we can see it without screwing it up. So if I have a second, let's do that. And then if this motion fails, then let's try to write this piecemeal as we sit here at the table without the benefit of legal review other than a lawyer sitting here looking at it, but not looking at it carefully.
Plus, I think we do need to get more citizen input. I think this is just not fair. I mean, you give them 24 hours to comment on the biggest thing that we're going to do. You know, when we're all about transparency and everything else that comes up, you know, we do, even the REACH codes, we had like 3 hearings on the REACH code. I mean, this is bigger than the REACH code. So for that reason, it'd be a good idea to go ahead and table it. So the motion that's showing up on the screen, is that Sean's motion, or whose motion is that?
It's in here, it's not going to show up on your screen. It would be to delay the matter till the contract can be rewritten and then reviewed with the city attorney.
All right.
And separately, I think there was a discussion raised about calling a special meeting. I am not sure whether we can actually do that. There may be a rule requiring that final action on compensation be at a regularly scheduled meeting. Let me just double check that and get back to you. But assuming that that is the direction council wants to go, it'd probably come back at the next regular
Would
council.
either be a special meeting if that's appropriate, or at the next meeting. So it would come back in due course after we can review it and have a proper legal review. So that's the motion.
Are we going to vote on the delay
Okay,
piece?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yes, there is now a second. A motion by Councilmember Luthold, a second by Councilmember Elahi.
Sergio, could you state the motion, please?
I believe the motion was to, Councilmember Luthold's motion was to table this to a subsequent meeting following discussion on, discussion on conflicts and amending the severance package.
And potentially amending the aggregate base pay language, any other necessary amendments that would need to be discussed so that we could see them in writing before we vote on them or do them on the fly.
Okay, so I have all votes in. And it fails, 2-3.
I'm shocked that you don't want to give the citizens of Monte Sereno additional time to look at this.
So my concern with that is that there's already been a rather unfair public airing of, and one-sided airing of the facts. And so I feel confident now that we have published the ad hoc report that there is a clear set of facts about the process that was undertaken, the amount of candidates that we reviewed, and how we came to that conclusion. So now that that is in the public, I'm quite confident that we can defend the action that we're taking. To delay this one more week, personally, I hesitate because it's just going to, I fear what will come next.
My concern is that, as a lawyer, I'm not going to write legal language in a public meeting space in a contract that is thereby approved on the spot. I think that is absolutely foolhardy, but that hasn't passed, and so I guess unless anyone wants to change their vote, we're going to go forward and we're going to do that. We're going to attempt to write a contract while we sit here tonight. So do that. That's the will of the majority.
And again, you say your ad hoc report has come out, people know about it. Nobody knows about it. It's only in this meeting. Present it, put it on, post it on Nextdoor, let people hear it. I'd love to see more supporters of Steve come in and tell us, why he's the best thing that could happen to us. But by the same token, I really feel like we've not had the opportunity to do any proper reference checks on him. And the ones that we have heard, they're not positive. So, you're going by your own personal viewpoint of things, but you're not, you're only seeing one side of the picture. There's two sides. You're not looking at the other side. So you really need to allow the process of having the contract amended go forward and give them a couple of weeks. What difference does it make? You're afraid in 2 weeks people will come back and you'll hear more stuff that you don't want to hear. That's all you're afraid of. Don't need to be afraid. Better to hear it now than hear it, after you hired him and now you have to pay him $400,000 for severance. and
Okay, so
salary.
I guess that motion failed. So do we have another motion?
Well, I move to accept the contract with the changes that we have made with striking the ability to practice real estate and the change from aggregate to annual.
I'd like to go through those one by one, if we may, because I think there are at least 3 issues that need to be addressed, up or down. It sounds like there may be a consensus removing the conflicting employment entirely so that it's disallowed, and we should do that. We might talk about clarifying language on how we aggregate, and then the question of how much severance to offer.
Bring
I
up
think
the
those are the
contract.
3 discrete items.
Spring.
And we're challenging the lawyer to write a contract on the fly in public. I don't think that's appropriate, but we'll do it.
No one there. Can you pass me a flash drive? We're gonna put the Word doc on the screen, that way I can make sure that we are actually making the revisions and we can see them all at the same time. I believe it's called City Manager Agreement. Draft City Manager Agreement, there it is. Yeah, I think that would be,
In section 1 duties, you just have to strike.
so let's see. The track changes, just so I can keep track of what we're doing here. First change. Let's go with December. Simple markup, all markup. Alrighty. The next change that was discussed,
1, you just have to, from the word accept,
I think
or
we are
the
thinking
comma.
of that change. Is that what the council is thinking of?
Yes.
Hold on a second, let's,
That basically reverts the contract back to the previous form.
so there is a motion by Councilmember LaBouvet to make that change to paragraph 1, striking the language as indicated on the screen, correct? I think we should go through the process. Is there a second?
So I have one more, so we can bundle those two.
I'd prefer that we not bundle.
All right.
So I will second that change. And let's have a vote.
So that was a motion by Councilmember Bouvet and a second by Councilmember Luthold. me 1 second, please. Councilmember Labouvet, second by Councilmember Luthold. That is to strike the clause of, with regard to outside employment.
Yes.
Or off-hours employment. Be able to vote? Okay, so I have all votes are in, and it passes 5-0. Would you like me to do a roll call vote?
I don't think a roll call vote is legally necessary at this
Okay.
point.
It passes 5-0.
The council has provided direction to remove that clause.
Section B, termination without cause. Language from the previous contract, but I think that given the public discourse, we should clarify that.
The change
Actually, I think probably we just want just base pay.
equal to 12 months at the manager's base pay. Or, well, equal to the manager's base pay.
Into the following schedule. So we
Percent
could
of
actually
funds.
just turn that into words if that's what the council wants.
I think 12 months base pay is,
Well, the problem is there's a schedule below.
Yeah, so we would need to change that.
Well,
We need to,
equal to the 6 months of the manager's base pay after 36 months and 12 months prior, if we put it all in words in that sentence.
yeah, well, I have a problem with the 12 months
Well,
thing.
I know, but we're gonna talk about that, and I want to make a motion either separately or on top of Councilmember Labouvet's motion to actually change the amount of the severance. And if that's final, could you read that out loud? It's kind of hard from this exact distance.
Okay, so
You can zoom it up a little bit, I guess.
I can zoom it out. That would be a great idea.
down in the right-hand corner. Increase the magnification.
Oh, yeah, this one is what I'm referring to. Is that better? So it would read, during the first 36 months of employment equal to 12 months of manager's base pay, and thereafter equal to 6 months of manager's base pay.
Okay, so with that now in print, I would like to offer an amendment to the amendment to change that to a lesser amount during the first 36 months. I'd like to see 6 months during the first 36 months. As Citizen Nekacek mentioned, if it's appropriate to offer some sort of compromise, maybe it's 8 months during the first 36 months if council member could reach a consensus on that or a majority on that. But I think 12 months is outrageous and unfair to the city should he not work out, because you're looking at conducting a bit of an experiment here. I wish him the best. I hope he works out. I plan to work with him if he's selected here, and to make him work out. But if he doesn't work out, that's the problem, because he didn't work out. So we shouldn't be giving away an extra 6 months here and now. So I would see if we can find a consensus number that's not 12, but if we, I would prefer that to be 6.
So I think we had a motion made. We did not have a second to that. So before we can have a motion to modify that motion, I would recommend there be a second on the first one.
Why don't we get to the number? Why don't we discuss the number
Put the number
first
in.
that we're going to get to? Is there, so again, during the negotiation, I'm not sure how closely you were paying attention, but, he was giving up substantial benefits from City of Los Gatos. I think it's a big ask, but in the spirit of compromise, why don't we?
Question is, if he's going to do a good job, there's going to be no reason to terminate him. If there is a reason to terminate it, we really need to make that 0 months.
But basically, the concern that he brought forward, and it's a very legitimate concern, is that, hey, I'm walking away from this and going to that. And should I come, empty, or should there be some skin in the game from both sides to at least try to bridge me a little bit? Those types of executive negotiations are quite reasonable. So for example, if you had vested stock options at another company and somebody said, hey, come on over and join my team, you would try to make them whole on the stock option piece and gross them up. Those are reasonable negotiations. So I'm saying that there is a number here. The number's negotiable. What might be, in the spirit of trying to reach a consensus?
So Mayor Turner pointed out the budget issues, the financial constraints that we have and which way we want to go. So do we want to risk giving somebody 12 months of service when we can't afford to give the staff a 5% raise or a 3% raise? I mean, if you combine all the 5 staff people and give them a 3% raise, it would not add up to the $200,000.
Well,
So that's why I think we need to come down with a lower number.
Can I make a comment on that one? It's not a 5% raise or an 8% raise. You have CalPERS, right? You have the benefits that come along with it. The city pays Social Security and CalPERS. And we pay the employer side and we pay the employee side. So it's not just 5 or 8%. So I think one of the things we need to do is to be cognizant of what we're really spending here.
Mayor Turner, may I just bring you some reality? You're going to have a union. The staff is going to demand pay comparable to everybody else. And you better have a city manager in place who can deal with that. And it is not going to be your 3% raises. It's going to be higher.
Well, I mean, we're not
That's a reality
negotiating,
check.
we're not negotiating any of the standard package that is included at this point. All we're talking about is severance at this point. And so we're acknowledging that Steve had a problem in that he has to transition from one benefits system where he's 100% vested with 100% family benefits. In our system, he doesn't transfer as a whole entity. In fact, his medical benefits are not fully covered in the same way. So we give a fringe benefit to account for family benefits. So basically, it didn't pencil out for him, and that's why he was asking for this assurance that we wouldn't approach this in a flippant way, right? He's saying, put some skin in the game. You'll never have to pay this money if you deal with me in a reasonable way. So I think we do have 6 months was the existing standard, but those people generally come with fully vested transfers. This is a non-fully vested transfer. We're just recognizing the fact that he is taking an enormous amount of risk. I don't think even a 6-month salary, if it were me, I wouldn't do it. Personally, I think it's a bad financial mistake. But, Steve, from what I've gathered, he volunteers, he does stuff. This is not in his financial interest to take this agreement, yet he is, because he thinks he can go do some good for the community. And so, I have to respect that. But again, in the interest of finding a compromise, I don't know if Steve would accept another number. You've been negotiating with him. I don't know. I'll float a number. How about meet you halfway? How about 9?
Yeah, I think when he came back to us in a negotiation last time, and I had some frustration with this because we started at point A, he came back with negotiation, with the word negotiation on it, and then what was offered to him was everything he asked for. And so we didn't do any negotiation yet. We're now doing that, and I think this is perfectly appropriate. I think I could accept going back to him with 8 months in the first 36 months. I could accept that number.
How about like go one more month and you got a deal?
We're already
How about split
striking
the
these.
difference? I don't even know if, he may not accept this deal, who knows?
Yeah,
right?
I think that is certainly a valid point. A contract requires a meeting of the minds, and we collectively might meet and on the minds and determine what the city's position is, but of course you have a counterparty that would need to accept that offer.
Here's a thought. Why don't you just make it 8 months and leave it at that? Don't worry about it going down after 36 months.
See, I don't agree.
Oh, okay, well, please offer your opinion.
I just don't agree.
I mean, my concern is that we've already taken away his ability to practice real estate, which is fine, but then going into the severance and lopping it that much might change the dynamics a little bit. I mean, I'd either stick with what we have or close to it and not, certainly higher than 8 months, but we've already adjusted this and taken something out of it. So
I'm with Mayor.
So I guess,
I think we should keep
Go
it
ahead.
as it is with these changes that we've made.
And I agree with Pro Tem Lawler.
I have another suggestion. First of all, I think, Ms. Tave, you could talk me into 9, and we may have a consensus of 3 that 9 is better than 12 here, if you would go with that. Alternatively, we could look at 3 steps, 12 months for the first 12 months, 8 months for the second, 13 to 24, and then 6 after that. That might be a way to, if it didn't work out in very short term, he'd get exactly what we're looking at here, and we put an in-between step in. So would we get rid of him in the first 12 months? It would be something that everyone would have to take a look at. If it was more than 12 months, it would be a little bit better. So we'd be at the 8 months on that second 12 months, if it came to that, because it would be a choice of the council at that point, where we've got to look at the performance versus what it's costing us to have a voluntary severance. So an idea. Don't know if we've got consensus of 3 on any of these ideas.
Okay.
So, do you have any other comments?
So Sean, you're basically proposing the first 12 months, it's 12 months?
Yes.
The next 12 months, it's
8.
8, and after that, it's 6?
Yes.
Okay.
What about 9? Why 8?
Well, I don't know. I wanted 9 from the beginning. I mean, if
12, 9, 6.
it was 12, 9, 6, I guess I could live with that. I'd like 9 and then 6. So, I mean, I don't know if we have a consensus with 3 of us on 9 and then 6.
So 12 for the first 12 months, 9 for the next 12 months, 6 for after that.
Conceivably. Or could we do 9 from the beginning?
Or 9 from the beginning, and get it over with. Your turn or your ball?
You guys have any
I
input?
go 12, 12, 9, 9.
12, 9, then 6?
Mm-hmm.
Split the difference.
So the first 12 months is 12, then it's 9,
Then 9, then 6.
Oh, another 9, okay.
No, 12, 9, 6.
There you go. All right.
So that,
So 12, 9, 9, 6.
why 2, 9?
No,
It's
just,
'cause
no,
3
12,
is
9, 6.
12, 9, 6.
Because we were at 6 at 36 months.
12, and then reduced to 9.
Mayor
and we're
Turner
just-
mentioned there's the first 3 years he wanted 12 for the first 36 months, right? So you're suggesting 12, 9, 9, then to the 6. So we're stepping down midway for the second 2 years. So maybe that'll be more acceptable. I'll second that if that's.
I mean, so I don't know how the candidate will pencil this out, right? I mean, it's essentially, it's a risk on his part, right? In terms of what he's walking away from versus, and what he's giving up, and then if, you know, we treat him poorly, I think this is, you know, requires to fill the hole.
So what are you suggesting then?
Your suggestion was to just do 9 months, the first 36 months.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking this, I mean, that's, not- this pattern.
Really, you're only talking about one.
I think if he makes it a full year, he'll stick, right? So I think his risk declines linearly. I mean, we could go 12-12-9 too, or something like that, or, I mean,
Well,
Sure.
say that again?
12-12-9 to
12-12-9, or is it 12-9-9-6? I don't know. I mean, again,
I'm looking at, again, it's a question of, it only comes up if he's not working out. So at the point where a majority of the council agrees he's not working out, how much money is it going to take us? And the city needs that to be the minimum amount possible, and he wants it to be the maximum amount. I understand that. So, I mean, we need to not be thinking about this from talking ourselves into what he would accept. We need to say, what is the city willing to do? And I think the point is, if he, as you just said, if he works out after a year, it's very likely he's going to work out in the long run. So we're really looking at this saying, you know, we got to give him something, if you're saying that, which is 12 for that first year. If there's something, if he's not working out in the first year, we all made the wrong decision, and it's going to cost us money. To undo that wrong decision. If he's not working out after more than a year, then we've already made it through the first year. He's been compensated, he's received 1 full year of income and benefits, and we're now looking at that. So I think that's where we begin as the city to say, you know, it's the city's situation now, not we screwed up and hurt him. So I would say, I mean, I could live with 12.996, I guess.
Lawler,
12-996, I mean, if that's what we need to do to get you guys on board, I mean, my concern is that we are taking away the real estate aspect, which, I mean, that's fine, but I'm going back to him, I just want to make sure that he, you know, that this is something that he can be happy with.
I think I'd probably go with this 12.996. It's,
Okay.
I appreciate the willingness to compromise at this late date.
So 12,996.
So that's the,
So now the challenge is, Sergio, can you code it? Let's get your coding abilities. 12 for the first 12 months.
So 13,
Nine-
so
12,
13 through 20,
yeah,
well, or
yeah.
you'd say 13 through 24,
for year 2 and 3.
or 13 through 30, 13 through 35, and then 36 or more.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Hate it when they do that.
And I don't think there should be a comma after a 35th month of employment. I think that's all part of the same phrase, equal to, so between employment and equal.
Also, I don't think you need the end thereafter, after the pay. Almost just base pay and thereafter.
Yeah.
Thirty-five or 36?
End of 35, and then beginning at 36.
It's after 36 months down below, so wouldn't it be starting month 37?
No, that's.
Really up to
the
you guys.
third.
If you're making changes to the contract, you know,
But it should be, the beginning, the full 3 years. It started, I mean, and so starting with the fourth year is the 36th month, because the
Or is it
first month is
37th
0.
month? Oh.
As you can tell us, you know what the intent is? It should be 35th, 35 or 36? 30 through the 36th month of employment.
Or is it
Like,
36?
does the decade
It'll
start
be
at 0 or
36,
year
yeah.
1? I mean,
It should be through 36
the
months.
last month is the 12th month of the year, so
Okay.
that
Right,
means
so
the last month
36.
of the.
So it should be
so
second
it should be
36.
37, right?
No, it should be
13
36.
through 36.
That should
Yeah,
be-
36.
Yes,
That's why Sean said, don't try to do it here.
that's right.
There we go, we got it.
Got 3 lawyers here. And
Okay.
But we're
All right.
lawyers, we don't know how to count.
Okay, so let's keep moving here, because
All
it's
right.
almost midnight.
So now we have a motion to approve these changes, correct?
Has anyone made that motion?
Well, right now, we're making a motion to approve that particular change.
Right. Somebody needs to make a motion in a second.
Okay, someone made a motion.
Okay,
we
so
just-
I'll make the motion for this one here.
Okay.
Here on the screen.
So we got separate motions for each paragraph.
Yes.
So far, yes.
We're such hardworking
And
people
one
here.
more.
Well, actually, the other change was already made. The aggregate was taken care of in this change.
Right, so
So hang on.
just 2 motions, that's fine.
Okay, so the motion is by,
I think we need to actually have it. The motion, I believe, was by Mayor Turner. I don't know if we had a second.
I second it.
Okay, we had a second.
Yeah.
There are first and second.
okay. Be able to vote. Okay, I have all 5 votes in, and it passes 5-0.
Can't agree to some things.
Okay. So shall we move? Is there anything else?
Oh, we still have
Oh,
to
I think
approve
we
the
have to
contract.
move to
We have-
accept the.
We have one more motion
One
to
more.
accept
Yeah.
the agreement, so I'll make a motion to accept the agreement
As modified.
as modified.
As modified.
Just some discussion, I appreciate the changes. My fundamental problem has been that we're hiring a person who has no city manager experience. So I will still vote against accepting this contract at this point.
And I'll make my comment here now, which is, I'm in a similar position, which is I've heard from the citizens that they haven't had time appropriate to look at this and give us proper input. So while I appreciate the changes, since we can't get the delay, my vote is no at this point. I might be able to reach a yes at the next meeting, but for now, my vote is a no. But if the council approves, then I certainly intend to work to make Steve successful.
Yeah, my comment is, the managers have to manage the manager, right? So we have oversight over the city manager, and we need to have processes in place such that he does what is expected and what is appropriate. And so let's work hard to put that process in place and keep aligned and not make the mistakes of the past, right? And run open loop.
Yep. And we have to do, quarterly reviews with him. So we prioritize his goals every quarter, and we already started the matrix to do that. So we're pretty much well on the way. So when he comes in, he knows exactly quarter to quarter how he's performing, so that by the end of the year, he knows exactly how well he's doing, rather than what we've done in the past, where city manager gets one review at 1 year, and there's no impact to him.
So the motion that's before us is to approve the contract as modified, correct?
That was your motion.
My motion, okay, so.
We have 3 votes in. 4 votes in. All votes in. And it passes 3-0, or I'm sorry, 3-2.
Okay, so shall we move? Next order of business is the committee and commission's report. Is there a council member that wishes to speak? No? Next order of business is council member comments? No? City manager's report? No report. No report. Future agenda items? I have one. The city auditor, Tarek Rodman. I talked to him today. I asked him to come and talk to us about our finances. So I want to do that at the beginning of next year for the next council, mayor and mayor pro tem. Our last item on the agenda is city council reorganization. So we now, I think I'm losing my voice. We now have the election of the mayor and the mayor pro tem. So let me start by nominating Liz Lawler for the mayor of Monte Sereno, and we don't need a second.
You can vote for 2 people by yourself.
And if anybody else wants to vote for yourself, go ahead.
So if there are any other nominations, you can, anyone can put forward
Yes.
a nomination
Yes,
at
you
this
can.
point.
Nominate, no, that's kidding. Nominate Rowena, but she's had a tough year.
Keep picking on me one of these days. I'm going to take you outside.
I just feel
and-
sympathetic for you. I feel sympathetic for you.
Because you give me a bad time all the time.
There's no other,
Okay, so what do we do?
so we need a vote on,
So I can
Lawler
just read the
format.
procedure. The mayor will ask the council for nominations for mayor. Any council member wishing to make a nomination may do so. A council member may nominate himself or herself. Nominations do not require a second. The council will vote on the nominations in reverse order that the nominations were made.
So we didn't get anybody else.
So then we must vote.
We must vote.
The vote. All 5 votes in, and it passes 5-0.
Congrats.
Thank you.
We have consensus of something.
Yes, yes. So I'd like to nominate Sean Luthold as mayor pro tem.
Second it, I guess.
No other nominations? Choose to vote.
Is council mover, council member Labouvet? I thought it was,
Oh, no.
I guess he was quick on the draw on that screen. I thought it was, this is,
Oh, I'm the mover? That's not,
Apparently.
I think this is the last motion.
Something, yeah, I can't get it to
No,
move on here.
it's,
Do a roll call vote, I guess.
Okay.
yeah, that,
Actually, okay, so Councilmember Alahi,
Yes.
Councilmember Labouvet,
yes.
Councilmember Luthold,
yes.
let's see, Mayor Lawler,
yes.
and Councilmember Turner.
Yes.
Okay, so it passes 5-0.
Congratulations.
Okay, so let me go ahead and outline enumerate some of our accomplishments for this city council for 2019. So this year, we focused heavily on transparency and have been strong advocates for transparency and an open government. We all work to encourage citizens to come forward and to send letters, come to meetings, and to make their desires known around issues. The council created an ad hoc committee on social media policy, and this was a really good move on the ad hoc committee. This enables us to use platforms like Nextdoor to communicate on issues that are important to the city. We still have to operate within the legal restrictions imposed by the state on the Brown Act, but this is a good step forward. We recently also launched the Monte Sereno Transparency Center, where you have now an easy-to-understand interactive breakdown of our finances, right? Our budget, our revenue, our expenditures from the year 2015 to 2019. This website also contains demographic information. We are actually the first city in Silicon Valley that has implemented cleargov.com. So in 2020, with the new city manager on board and with Mayor Lawler, we will be able to have more transparency centers implementation. So the council has also worked to prepare for threats that face the city. And just so you know, we're going to have 3 CERT members here in January. Earthquakes and wildfires are a major concern. We sponsored a series of seminars to raise awareness around wildfire preparedness. We also encourage residents to take training to join Monte Sereno CERT team. 2 of our 5 council members are CERT members, with 1 more coming in January. There are residents who are actively involved. We've had 5 this last CERT training, which is really good. This will enable us to open a NICP. Without citizens involved in CERT, we will not be able to open an NICP, so we need more. So we want to be responsible stewards of our tax money fees that our citizens pay. So we passed a resolution recently on user and regulatory fees based on actual costs rather than automatic increases based on CPIs. So this was a unanimous decision. We have also rejected proposals that would unnecessarily increase fees for city-managed services. We have continued our street improvement program that was instituted by the previous council. Potentially, the greatest change that our city may face comes from Sacramento. Bills passed this year may force us to permit apartment houses to be built within city neighborhoods. We formed a committee to monitor the scores of bills coming out of the legislature, and we're going to find ways to strengthen our ability to preserve the unique character of our city. This is work in progress, so stay tuned. We also took steps forward with an ad hoc committee with Los Gatos in a beautiful vet memorial at the town center. The council also revised a number of city codes. The city district regulations around setbacks, the height of fences, requirements around residential zoning districts were amended to clarify ambiguities and remove inconsistencies. Almost done. Subdivision and zoning codes were amended, such as Hillside and the Scenic Corridor and the subdivision development projects were first reviewed by Site and Architecture before going to City Council for approval. We want to increase the role of Site and Architecture, okay, in land use decisions, because that forum can provide us with a broader and more in-depth reviews of the issues that face Monte Sereno. The council also formed 2 ad hoc committees, one to hire our city attorney, right, and the other one our city manager. These ad hoc committees will continue to define the objectives and the performance evaluations for these 2 positions. In addition, the council dealt with a very polarizing issue. We passed the REACH code effective January 2020 that will now require new homes to be pre-wired to support the use of all electric appliances and provide electric vehicle charging stations. Many often say that government is the art of compromise, and you saw that tonight. In nowhere was there more evident than even within the issue around the REACH code. The council held widely divergent opinions. The compromise was to encourage the use of electricity without forcing extraordinary expenses from our residents who preferred to use gas. I believe in the end, each of us dealt with this professionally, which may be the mark of a fairly good decision. Lastly, I want to congratulate the new Monte Sereno mayor, Liz Lawler, and our mayor pro tem, Sean Luthold. The council is certainly looking forward to accomplishing more in the year 2020. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Now, let's move this over to Mayor Lawler.
Is this when I adjourn the meeting?
Yes, you do.
Do you have any remarks about what your goals are for the whole year?
No, it's not on the agenda. She's not
It's
allowed
not on
to
the
speak.
agenda. It'll be next time.
Saved by that.
Yeah, besides, look at the time.
Thanks.
All right, the City of Monte Sereno City Council meeting for December 3rd, 2019 is now adjourned at 11 p.m.